What's up, guys? It is Modern Craftsman Monday.
Monday.
I'm not.
That was a good one.
All right,
That's one of the survey
Thanks,
questions.
John, really great attitude today.
Seriously.
Anywho, we have Matt Troyer on for the second
AKA
time.
Forrest Gump.
Forrest.
We're absolutely going to be talking about his running and why he started and how it relates to business. Even more so, the relation between why he started running in business, but also the similarities between running and setting goals with that and building a business and talking about scaling up and setting these micro goals for the overall macro.
Good. That was well put.
That was good. That was good.
I have nothing to add.
Great. So let's roll into it, boys.
And girls. Or is that boys for us?
For you.
For us.
All right.
Take it away, Banjo.
Shop's looking good. Office part working out for you now that you don't use it, right?
No, I'm back in the office now.
You are back, yeah, cool.
Yeah, we're back in the swing of things.
Yeah.
Massachusetts is in pretty good shape, I guess, but you know we still get all the precautions. I actually hired a safety manager, so he's on like monthly retainer, so he's just keeping us going, making sure everything's in good spot.
Just letting you know
What's
you
up,
need
John?
to know. He's just letting you know what you need to know so he can make value for himself.
Well, that and he's doing all like the OSHA logs, the weekly toolboxes.
I don't
everything.
trust any of those guys. It's all fake and bullshit.
The toolbox talks that nobody wants to do.
No, but you know what? I've been on the other side of an OSHA fine, and I've also been threatened.
Yeah, they tried to
a
talk me
lifeline.
into that one, dude. When we did that big sport court thing. They basically came up the whole safety advisor thing, and they were like, you're going to need this, meaning if you don't hire us, we're just going to report you. I was like, really, man? And my site guy was the one who was worried about it because he's got the most liability during that job. Right. And I was like, let me evaluate this. And then I looked at the numbers, and I really just rolled it by the client. I was like, hey, this is going to be a huge nut. And we ended up not being, we had all the right precautions. We do it anyways. So
yeah,
it was just.
Well, that's what it was. Is I want it just as we grow. I don't want to get too big and then not have like a formal safety plan, what to do, and then it's more so the. It's not that big of a cost. And I actually reached out to him through a friend of mine. He started as a contractor, and he's like, I never in a million years thought I'd be a safety guy, and now he's just like, and I realized that all the safety guys out there are just too strict, and like there's no one really appeasing like what actually needs to be done without going overboard. So we sat down for an hour, put together a plan, and
what's he doing?
What do you mean?
It sounds very rude the way I put it. I need to work on my
What's he doing?
My soft roll in. I got to.
What's that dick doing anyway?
On what
so
job?
He put together the COVID plan. He put together the safety plan. He handles all our
safety plan, meaning what? If you get cut, who do you have to go to? Like
just
safety,
everything.
What does that mean for like the guy who doesn't have one? Like, what am I missing out on, bro?
Safety manual.
Yeah, it's a manual. It's basically the job site manual for any near miss or incident. So like if you get cut, what are the steps you're supposed to take, and we have that built for all our job sites, so everyone has it, like who the contacts are, like how your job site safety board should be set up when you walk in the job. We have he handles the NFPA 241 plans that Cambridge and Boston want. He's got obviously the COVID plan now, but he puts together all the weekly stuff, and then anytime like if we're going to be on a boom lift, like he'll come out and train us on the boom lift. The difference is, John, that you're not self-performing. That's where it's important for me. We're self-performing all this work. So if I put a guy in a boom lift and he gets hurt, and OSHA can find me on it. Where if
most of the boom lift companies will actually, they want the rental, so they'll come out and train your guys.
Yeah, true. That's true. But if someone got hurt, they're going to come in.
I feel like I'm leaning back on the PM. Like, isn't this the PM's job to know that?
Yeah, it's the PM's job, but the documentation. If you get cited by OSHA and you don't have documentation of OSHA logs and the fact that you do this regularly, the fine is far more substantial. And I only know that because we've been not NS builders, but I was fined at my last company, and that was the first thing I asked for.
There's kind of a different level of project. No offense to the NS builder size.
100%. But it's a cheap reassurance that someone is actively putting that into place for me, and I'm not having to worry about it or rely on a PM.
Covers your butt big time.
Does that get built to the job, or does it get rolled into
overhead?
O&P?
Overhead.
So you got to up your overhead going forward to have this extra piece?
Yeah, it's like, I want to say it's less than $4,000 a year. I know that.
It's not bad.
It's not bad. For weekly meeting, for weekly toolbox talks too.
Yeah.
That's not bad at all.
I know. He's probably listening to this like, you motherfucker, I gave you a deal. No, it's not bad. And he's making sure they get done and they're filed, and I have he sent me a full customized job site safety thing, and then every job we go, he modify it, and he'll do sporadic visits, which I wanted anyway. You know?
Does he come in and cut up extension cords that don't have a ground?
I told him to.
Yeah.
Then the contractors will bill you for it anyways.
Yeah.
Like it's half dozen one the other. Like you're not gonna win. It's
yeah.
I know.
I just haven't been able to find the value in it. Like even back then, that project was massive that we had with the soil nail wall and all that, and I definitely debated it hard.
I just feel like it's not like you're not gonna find value until it's too late.
No, I don't agree with that. It's I'm also the psycho that thinks that if I wear safety glasses, I'm saying this with a huge smile, is that I will soften up a little bit because I'm not aware of stuff coming at me. You get me? Like I'll just be wide-eyed. You know how many times when I was a carpenter, I got stuff in my eyes when I had glasses on?
That was the only time I got stuff in my eyes.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I had the same thing as like, no, I should be vigilant on this stuff. Like that should be my top priority because I've watched guys get shot. I've been shot with stuff. Like it's happened everywhere. I've seen guys fall. I've seen all of it. And it's like, those are all simple steps that I don't want someone else to think about, because then my guys need to be on point for that. Meaning, oh, that guy's got that. Did he bring that up? Well, he didn't bring it up. So I don't think it's valuable. And we pay him for that. So
I do think that it's the PM's job. It's the enforcement. It's the
I just think it's the
accountability.
Overall awareness. It's awareness.
Yeah.
You see it, you should shut it down. It's like if he's, like I always bring up that story back in the day on Lathrop Road where we were doing a concrete pour. We're going to pour the slab. And I remember I was there and I'm like, this is Jason again. Jason, don't listen to this. He's a cowboy when he was pouring our slabs. And I remember saying it was a walkout. So obviously it'd be easy to drive the concrete truck down to the backside, but the elevation change was ridiculous. Plus it wasn't compacted. A tire's in a sink. And I remember saying, I made sure I was there for that moment. First truck arrived. Because I'm like, that's the opportunity to get down there. Benny was there. And I was like, no matter what happens, that truck doesn't go down below. I don't care how many chutes they got to use. We could have gotten a pump truck. This could have been simpler. They didn't want to do it, so now they're going to want to push to have that truck down there. He's like, yeah, no, I get it. So I'm walking to my truck, and then Ben talks to Jason, and then Jason talks to the driver, and the driver's like, I'm like, oh my God, it's going to happen. It's like, I'm watching it happen right now. And so I get up, I jump on the side of the concrete truck. I go, you're not driving down there. Because he has no responsibility in this whole thing, the driver.
Right.
He goes home regardless if that truck flips over and ends up in the neighbor's house. Like, so my safety plan, any binders or anything I would have had, I'm not knocking your thing, Nick. I'm just thinking this is what came to my mind, always has, is like the only way of preventing that is being on top of it. Because I went over it with Ben, and then it still went from the GC, from the concrete guy.
Attaboy.
I agree.
The minute you get Ocean out, though, and if there's a violation, if you don't do even the weekly logs, that's like the simplest one. There's an automatic fine for not doing weekly toolbox talks, I've heard.
Yeah.
because you're showing that you're not doing preventative training at all. So I say that's one of the lowest hanging fruit ones to just get to do, which we don't do either. We need to do a better job.
And John, not trying to convince you, right? But it's the same thing with Build a Trend. It's like, I think when I had talked about it before, your argument was that the PM should be communicating that stuff anyway. You shouldn't be relying on the software. I'm not necessarily relying on the software, nor am I relying on the safety manager to make sure that this is implemented. It's just the checks and balances for when something does go wrong. If that concrete truck did, say you left 5 minutes earlier, and that concrete did roll over, like, what is the right process?
But regardless if I had a guy there, we were screwed. So I'm talking about if I
would
had
have been less screwed.
Because I would have, but people still would have gotten hurt regardless if I had a binder and that stuff on the job site.
Understood, but the fact of the matter is,
a good debate. I like
if
this.
If OSHA showed up,
I'm screwed.
They would have asked. Yeah, they would have screwed. You would have been less screwed. You would have absolutely been less screwed.
I'm not worried about being less screwed. I'm just worrying about people getting hurt. And
of course,
the top
but
priority. There's
time. It's just like last week when you said, "Well, aren't you there as a PM to make sure that doesn't happen?" Shit happens, and I'm just taking the approach where it's like, if shit does happen, I want to make sure I have everything in place that I'm protecting myself. It's like insurance.
I just feel like at some point, does it just add up to be better just to hire a more experienced PM than all these other individual niches? Why not? How do you know?
I just
a 45-year-old PM.
I don't know. I just disagree with you.
Answer. That was a
I
quick
disagree
answer.
with you.
But all these different departments.
They might manage better, but one person that's only on safety is definitely going to do a better job, I think, overall. Once you get a certain scale of needing more people checking on it, if you got 10 jobs, you're definitely have a better, if somebody's only going around checking safety, right? Because those guys get busy and running around and don't want to.
And this guy, and he's not full time. It's, I have him on a retainer where he provides weekly toolbox topics. He handles all of our safety plan needs for permitting.
Can we document how long this is going to last? And under anybody, they can DM us how long will this individual last doing this, or will it get old and it won't.
And it's builders.
Yeah,
$76 a week is what it's costing you. That's not bad.
Why would it go away?
I'm just talking out loud, just hypothetically.
Yeah. Make a bet.
I'm just throwing out there.
What's the over-under?
I mean, I'm not done scaling, and we're scaling. Like, I want to continue to scale up. So
you have to, because you keep taking this work.
Right.
And you have no option but to scale more.
I mean, I'm taking work selectively, but I want to be in a market. I want to be in a particular market, and I know what that market's going to entail. I shouldn't say that. I believe I know what that market's going to entail and what I need. And I'm balancing, I think I said it yesterday, again, with my yesterday comment.
You had huge yesterdays.
I had fucking huge yesterday.
Every day before the podcast is just massive for you.
Get it all done before we hop on the podcast.
We have essentially three divisions of the company. We have our management, our carpentry company, and our millwork company.
Niches or companies?
And what?
Niches or companies?
I mean, it's one company, but they could be, it's divisions, 3 different divisions of the company. Not niches.
I feel like I have like 10. I got carpentry division, tile division, paint division, cabinetry division.
You know what you need? You need a safety guy. Nick, could you shoot that over to Tyler?
I'm going to meet with him. Just him and I are going to meet every week. And go over and be like, I banged I slipped, I missed a nail this week, hit my thumb pretty good.
No, you should schedule a meeting with him with all your department heads at different days, and it's just you that show up.
Every time I show up with like a different hairdo. Man, I have a new guy working for me.
What?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
Definitely need a safety guy now.
He's such a ball buster.
What is that? I'm trying to come off chill.
You are not coming off chill.
How?
It's coming in hot.
What?
How was your day, Johnny? Not good, apparently, huh?
No, it's always good, man. Last week.
I'm not going to say that he doesn't have completely valid points.
Which one, me or John?
The scaling.
I mean, I think
feel
both
like-
of us have valid points. I think the biggest difference is that we self-perform, and we have that's.
No, but you're not answering the question that there was again, not taking anything away from your guys, but like if there was a GM in place, we've talked about this a million times.
Yes.
That would handle a lot of scaling and this oversight. Operations
He would be responsible for sending out weekly safety meetings.
You can write those
document
responsibilities
that.
however you feel fit, but I think what you're getting at is driving at is the overall oversight for all these different divisions. It can't all overlap onto one person being you. And how do you oversee this stuff? So in case, which most likely will happen based on the experience levels and the ages of the guys you have working for you, that this is going to happen, it's inevitable, and how do you cover yourself when it does?
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay, sounds like it.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that it's less expensive for me to just have one guy responsible for it to make sure it gets done, rather than having one guy. Like, what I realize is that if I can get guys to wear less hats, they're better at what they do, rather than throwing, hey, I also need you to do all these safety logs every week and make sure they're in the right spot and do your OSHA log, and that they're responsible for safety. Absolutely. If I had a more experienced PM in place, would they have more experience with safety? Absolutely. But for me to, Matt, you did the math. For me to pay $76 a week to have one guy make sure all of that stuff in place and at our, quote unquote disposal to make sure that when I need a specific safety plan for a permit or a project, I can reach out and he can do that, rather than taking up my PM's time or my time to do that, to figure out how to draft up the NFPA 241 plan, to make sure that the COVID plan is adequate enough for us to fly through the permitting process. $76 a week, that's worth having that.
I would get like 3 at that rate.
I just think, John, you and I are talking about different things. The PM is responsible for the safety, absolutely. Having this guy in place is just is a resource. So when we need something, or we have a question, or we approach something that we need help with from a safety aspect, we're not having to do the research on it or figure out what the city needs as far as a safety plan. We have someone that we can talk to.
No,
So Matt, you hired a personal trainer.
Yep.
How about a nutritionist?
I need one of those. I've been losing too much weight.
Seriously, you don't have one?
No, I got a buddy that's my running friend. That his wife's a dietitian, so I get at least free advice from them while I'm running. So that works.
I feel like you're like Forrest Gump.
Dude, it's been quite a year.
I thought I saw you run by my house. Did you run by my house?
Seriously, you're like in that one part. It was like, and one day I just started running.
I was wrong, man. And my beard's long enough. When I'm out there and I'm all sweaty with a hat on, I've had multiple people yell at me.
Oh man, why'd you start running?
I don't know.
Stress?
I never ran until stress for sure. That helped. I mean, I was a light runner. I played soccer in high school, so I was used to running, but not running for fun. And I'd really, like a year ago, it was I helped my buddy. I went to Colorado. He ran the Leadville 100-mile trail race out just outside of Denver. And it's 100 miles in 30 hours, like incredible, like what people do in that kind of environment, and at 14,000 feet and up and down the mountains. It's pretty wild. So that kind of got me the bug of it. So it's I don't know. It's kind of it's not even really just running. It's like the ultimate, ultra distance is kind of where I'm interested the most, of like, how long can you run? How much can you put your body through kind of stuff now. So it's, but I missed I was supposed to do a race in March in my first like 50K trail run. So like 31 miles. I was signed up for it, but it canceled because COVID early on. So, but now I'm signed up for one in September if it happens up in Wisconsin. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, I've logged, I think we looked at today, like 750 miles so far in 2020. And I did like 280 like all last year. So like
wow.
my scale of like mileage addition has been pretty wild. Like
I don't even think I've driven that far this year.
Did 214 miles in June. So that's a record for me. So basically averaged 7 miles a day for June. So
did
wild.
you go to like a running coach? just for form and all that? You just natural?
No, so yeah, I mean, I definitely battled some injuries. I've had 3 kind of calf injuries over the last year. So, I mean, at least playing athletics, I knew somewhat how to run, but it's, I would have a tendency to have okay run, but I think it was really just my body figuring out, like, what are you doing, right? Like, you went from like not running, I'm 38, not really running much, and then go to 0 to 1,000 overnight that's kind of why I had some calf injuries. So, and then figuring out adjusting to running shoes and that kind of stuff makes a big difference. But
did you get fitted for that?
I went to the store and I tried some insoles, but now I'm kind of back on, took the insoles out. And I think I've just learned a lot of it just comes down to building up durability of your body. Like, your body just needs to know what it's up against. And I feel like my body's kind of figured out what I'm planning on doing.
You're going barefoot soon, aren't you?
I was gonna say you could get a specialist for that. He's probably like $67 a week, and you could dial in the running, 100%.
Yeah, do you know whose brother does that? Jason, JPM. His brother does.
He looks
like
good.
super long trail runs. I feel like they're 100-mile trail runs where he basically dies over the weekend.
Yep.
And then comes back to life.
Yep.
Now, my buddy, when we trained for a half Ironman, and he got like a coach for each thing. Nick, this probably tells you a lot about where my mentality is. He got a coach for every single the niche, and I just went out and ran and swam and biked without any of it. But he did say it was a huge, like, when like your right hip is hurting, it's not your right hip, it's the opposite side. So they would basically dial him up on a screen, see where his impact zones were, and then corrected his form, which made him a lot freer to run. And I was like, dude. So he was doing that, and then doing the cupping and all that to relieve some stress. And he used to always have back issues in college and hockey, and it made a huge difference. I always wanted to do that, but the facility was right next to his house in Reading. I just never got around to it, but I just didn't know how deep you went into it if you're going that many miles.
Yeah. Fortunately, I've been to the chiropractor a bunch, like through some of my injuries, but I actually had back surgery when I was 28. So I had a herniated disc 10 years ago now. And it was basically like, you shouldn't run, you shouldn't do impact stuff. And like, I feel great right now. So I dropped 30 pounds. So like I can notice the difference in like I'm carrying around less. So it's like way less to run with. So
easier to run. Yeah, that was my problem. When I did the half iron, I was like, I'm carrying way too much weight.
Yeah.
Like when you go to that setup, when you see everyone else, you're like, I'm in good shape. I killed it. And then there's like legit athletes there, and you're like, I don't fit in.
Yeah. I'm signed up for one of those Go Ruck events. Have you seen those where you backpack with like a plate in your backpack? Like Go Ruck is a big one. My 10-year-old son and I were signed up to do one here in a month. And so we'll walk like 10 miles together. And I have a 30-pound metal plate now, and I hold that, and I'm like, holy cow, this was me like last year. And like that feels like a lot. Like that's crazy.
You're basically pregnant.
Yep.
30 pounds is a lot, man.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie, nothing sounds worse than this to me. Like,
I was talking to Matt about this because Meg and I were gonna run the marathon before they canceled it, and we started training, and I heard
convenient.
I know. I was thankful. I got hurt at 13 miles. I made it there, and it was like it was the same thing. My shin and my knee just completely gave out. I think that's when I had texted you. I was like, "How do you do this, man?"
But that could probably be like your sneakers. Like that could be as easy as the right. Like I found
which is wild because the first probably 6 miles I did, like intervals, I ran with these sneakers I've had for 3.5 years. I wear them to the gym. Like they're just not running sneakers. They're just lightweight Nikes. And I went and got running Nikes, and it was that day, or excuse me, the next week I ran with them, and it was just immediate. Like my legs were sore after, and I kept going, and then I hit 13, and it was like, I don't know if I got the wrong shoe, but I got fitted. I sat down. They said this is going to be the best fit for you. I don't know, but I
There's just a ton
agree.
of factors. Yeah, the big thing I've learned is like the Hal Higdon. He's a guy that does like a lot of training plans for marathons. He's an old guy, and his thing is just like consistency. Like there's a tweet I just saw that more than any fancy training schedule or interval trainings or tempo runs, just run day after day, week after week, year after year at a level where you don't become injured.
Right.
Like I think that like my body's just becoming more durable because I'm running every day right now.
I think that speaks to a lot of things, right? Just doing something over and over, and you become good at it.
But I guess there's something about form though. Like if you have awful form,
totally.
you'll be junk. Like I remember when I failed at the half Ironman because it was 94 degrees, and I was like, I can just run this. I've done my circuit training and all that, and then it was so hot that my quads from the bike, I literally couldn't run. I would cramp up, and I was like, oh my God. So then when I started running again, I wouldn't run like you would run in high school. You know, like that big sprint with like the long elongated leg. It's almost like a shorter shuffle, where now I'm not utilizing my quads quite as much. And then I did a lot of research on how guys run it. It is more straight up and down instead of that deep stride, and my shoulders almost don't even move. So I don't know, I just got really deep into running.
It's crazy. There's a ton of factors.
Going back to why you started running, you know, you said, or I think Tyler said, stress. And that's, you know, we kind of got into it, you know, offline, but, you know, it was really to get away from work, which is wild because you're so invested in what you do.
Yeah, it's been I don't know. That's why I was kind of making some notes about, like, just, I hadn't really even digested like the last few months, like, and I want to kind of sit down and digest even more of that. But like for me, it was like, I think, so this kind of started for me last year in May, and it's really been about a year now that I've actually been running. And like, I remember New Year's Eve party, like we were sitting on a group of friends, and it was like, all right, what's everybody's New Year's goal? And, you know, normal deal. And I hadn't even thought about it. Like, what's my priorities, whatever. And I think it just came to top of mind. Like, I clearly love my business, but like I want, you know, I'm in an entrepreneur group at EO, and it's, you know, we talk every month we meet. We talk about the top 5%, the bottom 5% in business and personal and family, and it's like those are three priorities. And I think you know, what it takes to do what I've done over the last, you know, 10 or 12 years. Like, I've been all in business, and it's like I wanted to. It's not about. I wanted to kind of shift my balance of that, and I've kind of also learned that there is no such thing as balance. It's really like prioritizing what you want to make the top priority. It's not about being able to balance everything, because we can't do everything. So, you know, it's really like, I just want to shift a little bit of my focus away from the business and focus more on the family and on the personal. And that was kind of strategic for the beginning of this year. And really then coronavirus hit, and it was like, well, holy cow, I guess I'm forced to lock down, and like it shifts everything for everybody. So, so I don't know. I mean, it's really, I look back now and like, I am in a great mental state. I'm in a good spot with the business. Like, we're fine. We're surviving. I'm grateful for everything we have. I'm especially grateful because there's a lot of companies that aren't in our industries that can continue on because we were deemed essential, that we all can operate if we need to, at least in Indiana. But, so just grateful for like almost being forced to like revisit everything, and like revisit what it means to prioritize your day, what it means to how we operate as a business, what it means to spend my time at home or with the kids. And so I've actually come out of this, like, we're not even out of it. Like, I feel like I'm kind of grateful for the experience that's happened over the last few months, because it's really helped me achieve that prioritization of personal life as much as the business. So, and there's a lot there, because you can dig into the business side of the personal side and family side. So.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. I feel like the decision is usually pulled from one. It's either from something in business or from something at home. And in your case, which was it?
Yeah, I feel like I've felt the pull. Like, I've pulled so much away from the family and home for the last, 10 years. So it's almost a correction of that, of like, okay, now I've hopefully earned, where I'm at, and like, I got to figure out how to create that freedom and a little bit more freedom in the day to day. And I think what it's clicked for me now, and what we've really dug into with my leadership team of the company, is like, I've got to hand off power to people. And like, I've got to, it's same for, I guess we kind of come back to Nick and I are kind of in similar models of business, different than Tyler and Johnny, but like, how to, the way to scale that is like, I got to get out of the way, and I got to let my people do more so I can create the freedom to do these things. And it can be beautiful, because you can empower your people, which means that the more people around you hopefully can do more as a group that we could ever do on your own. And that's always been my mentality, or like the model of the company. The name of our company was not necessarily my name. Not there's anything wrong with that, but like, I wanted to build something that was bigger than any one person could do alone. So like, but I've been saying that, but I've been also holding on to the power for so long, right? And not trusting people to like take things and run with it. So And I think that's kind of clicked for me, and hopefully it's helped now that I've empowered more of our employees, and I'm continually going to do that strategically over the next few months. Like we have a pretty good plan laid out now for like, everybody's thinking like we got to get Matt freed up more from the day to day to like focus on himself, focus on vision, and then focus on where can we grow the company. Cause you just get stuck in the operations, right?
So what does that look like? What is that conversation like with your team? What exactly are you passing off? Because I think about like who's listening to this and who might be trying to do something similar or struggling with, their home life because they are stuck in the operations. What has that conversation look like?
Yeah, I guess it kind of goes back to maybe we even talked about the original conversation of like some of my strategic moves were like I got rid of a pickup truck, went with a Jeep because it was fun, but it also clicked mentally for me. Like I can't go do that running around anymore because I don't have the ability anymore. And it's empowering that person to get the truck, give somebody else in the truck and let them go do it, to do more efficient things. So at least for our structure now, like my main priority now is, other than the overall finances and operations of the company, not all the entry stuff, but kind of the strategic stuff. But I'm doing still most of the sales, estimating, preliminary design stuff a little bit before we hand it off to the team. So even some of that, I'm trying to shift that around with our team to get more involved in estimating early on, or even taking some of the smaller projects, the initial leads off of my plate. So, we just had a meeting today about it, and it's taking some of the stuff that I feel like we've got our lane. We're kind of in a little bit of cruise control on the normal stuff, the projects we do, the kitchens, the whole houses, the remodels and stuff. And then, if we can get a team to do that and keep that on cruise control, then I can go kind of focus more on, okay, let's figure out how to strategically get more new construction. Let's figure out how to do more, more commercial projects and then build a team to backfill some of those kind of things. So, or buy more real estate or build spec homes, to have time to meet with investors and that kind of stuff. So, so it's really just freeing up that space for the creativity and the vision side that we try to do. And I think and I've learned a lot of that on the way as I'm out running 10 miles with or without somebody. Like the space that creates and allows, like it's that's where just creating that space for you is where some of the best ideas come up. So
was there something that happened that kind of made this, like, that really opened your eyes to this, where it sounds like it was almost overnight, you had enough and you decided you were going to make a change? Or was it, I'm sure it was a slow progression, but was there a distinct thing that made you say, I need to change?
No moment. I guess you get the feed. So we're working through one right now that we're working through, like, we have our core values, collaboration, heart, integrity, awareness. And we've structure for how you do meetings and how you do amongst the whole management team. So it's kind of a whole platform of how you run your weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual, like strategic planning times. Highly recommend that as well. But sitting in some of those moments, and one of them clicked for us, where it's like everybody's going around sharing, like at the end of the session, like with my team of 6 or 7, like go around and say your favorite thing about each person at the table. And like, we were all in tears. Like people were crying about being so grateful for and speaking that gratitude to each other about what they do. And I think that, even, hearing from the team, or one of them was my wife that spoke up, which is a little awkward for people to hear that maybe, but it's like, she was like, if you guys realized how much Matt pours into this for the company, like to do it. So that wasn't what started this months back, but that was kind of a clarifying moment for me a few weeks ago of like, we're on the right path. Cause she's seen the sacrifice that I've given up from the family, and she's given up a little bit. And we've, it's a welcome shift for everybody, because it then translates to me being more engaged when I am there with the company, because I've created space to have my own outlet and kind of create balance in my life and perform better when you're around. So, but to, really the running and the freeing up the space are kind of it wasn't strategically connected to any of that. It was just like, I think it's been a result of, you hear that being in good physical shape, like, translates to every part of your body and every part of your world
life
and your whole, and it's, I guess I'm just seeing that proved out in my life over the last year, that I've heard this for so long. And it's like, well, just go read or go run or go and, do something physical to clear your head. And like, I finally did it and committed to it. And it's really been life transforming. So.
Yeah. I feel like with me, it's always, I put up with enough. I guess that's just my personality as well, where I'll kind of swallow my words or put up with it for long enough, and then there's always the last straw where I'm like, I mean, it's every 2 weeks there's a last straw where I'm like, all right, sell everything, sell the house, let's move, let's downsize, let's go. But I didn't know if it was I think that, it slowly creeps up on you, and then all of a sudden you're like, I can't keep my head above water.
Yeah, totally agree. We've had the same moment. I think this whole COVID thing too, we went through moments where like, what are we doing? Let's just pack it up. Like, what do we, or it's also made me realize like, man, maybe we could do this thing kind of more remote. And like, I can take, I sold 3 kitchens without even going on site. Like during this whole thing, like over Zoom, I'd sketched it out. I had the customer pull measurements for me. And we did the layout and like and signed the deal without even having to interact with them. Like that whole thing changed how we do our business.
Matt, I've had similar experience. We actually closed a really big job for us, and have never met the client. Met over a phone call, met over Zoom, signed a contract digitally, and we're going to be starting excavation for a new house in 3 weeks.
That's awesome.
And I wonder, I too thought of that, like, hey, this could really change the way we do business. But the other side of me is like, well, are people just more open to it because of the situation? And when life is back to, air quote, normal, will that not be acceptable? And I think it's the entire work from home side of this is this going to become, I think there's going to be a massive shift to it. A lot more people are going to work from home, but I don't think it's going to be widespread where everyone is comfortable with continuing that way.
Yeah, it's definitely sped up the initial process for us tremendously. Like going from quick intro, let's do a quick meet and greet, even bring the whole team into a Zoom call. Like that's awesome, right? Like you would never do that before we're a first time customer. You schedule something and you go ahead and meet the project manager, superintendent, whatever. Like you can drag a couple people onto a quick meeting and you can, I think, get that quick, like get to know you out of the way, or like a high level, like show me your space. Like, cause you think about drive time, you think about, all your other stops that end up derailing you. Like it's ridiculous. Like the efficiencies I've done the same business with about half the amount of time commitment. Right.
Yeah.
So, and now I can go out and run in the mornings. I go out and block out time and because I can be more efficient. So
the one question I think, is hard to, and I'm sure it's hard to answer, but as obviously there's a difference. You're the owner of the business, but do you ever fear that, by you pulling away from the business more and having more free time, that, the employees look at that as you kind of shifting away from focusing on the business and, almost have this sense of jealousy to it? Like, well, Matt only works 4 hours a day and he works from home on his laptop, on his couch, in his underwear. It's like, why, and here I am busting my ass.
Yep.
You're just in underwear right now also?
I only have a shirt on, yeah.
So you guys can't see at home, but
yeah, it's beautiful. No, it's definitely something to think about. And I think that, and I guess to say that I've cut back, like I'm clearly not even below probably 40 hours a week right now.
Right.
Like it's probably going from like 60 to 40, right? Like
right.
It's really kind of created back to a normal flow. But, and there's, I still try, we're just trying to build in rhythms of, I still try to do a one-on-one with anybody that's like my direct reports weekly. Mm-hmm. We just launched kind of a new cadence for our weekly kind of leadership meeting, our weekly operations meeting, our monthly, we're going to do an all company meeting, our quarterly all company social get-togethers. Like we're trying to create rhythms to have like that kind of regular check-ins with people. And I think that, so I don't know. I mean, I think I want to, and I think I've kind of put some freedom on the team to like, obviously carpenters, you can't work remote and be more efficient with your time than going out and doing the work. So those are ones that it's hard to say that to, but like management or, if it's sales or if it's administration, like work from home, like we've been super flexible. Like and the team has put in odd hours. Like it's, hey, I got two kids at home. Both spouses are trying to work remotely. One of us is going to take kids in the morning. One of us got kids in the afternoon. I'll work in the evenings. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of made everybody relearn a whole new way of workflow and a lot of trust there. So I think so we've really dug our heels in over the last few months on, we've got to get the core values hammered out. We've got to come to an agreement on what the team is doing and who's doing what and what the expectations are. So kind of getting back to stuff that I need to be focused on, which is like the leadership of the team and not the operations. Like I think that to say that I'm stepped out of the day-to-day, it's not that I'm stepped out of the company. It's like I got to be focused more on leading my people and growing my people than doing what our business actually does, you know?
It's more the not the day-to-day, but the like creating those systems.
Yeah.
And
how many people do you have work for you now or with
so
you?
We're still like at 12. So we kind of floated around a similar number to this last year. And it's basically half field, half office management staff.
And your field is like similar to Nick, where you're doing mostly carpentry, light framing?
Yep. Yeah. So we have framing, drywall, some drywall, mostly finished carpentry. And then we hired our first female carpenter, and she's learning carpentry, but she's doing a lot of our small finish work. She came from auto finish, so super high-end finishes for stair treads and that kind of stuff. So
that's badass.
Yeah, I'm excited to have her. So she came from auto body, so and she wanted to learn the carpentry stuff. So it's kind of a good combo for us to have. We'll build we buy a lot of cabinets, but we'll build a custom piece, and now we're gonna have it where we can just build it and finish it separate of the rest of and maybe even still have the painter paint all the millwork.
Yeah.
But we would take care of the finish on something high end, you know?
It's funny, I've never thought of, Ken and I talk about like eventually when we build a bigger shop having finish in house, and I've never thought of the automotive industry as a possible avenue to find a finisher. But you're absolutely right.
You gotta be. I think it's even for her learning like the level of like glass from an auto finish is different, right? Than like woods and grains and stuff like that. So
doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be. Yeah, you can do the high end gloss finishes if that's what it's called for. But a lot of the stuff it can be a touch lower than what a car could get away with a little bit.
Right.
But yeah, I'm excited. So that's kind of a cool shift for us, and then we're trying to.
To speak to the the SOPs and the systems and stuff, I think that's I had said it early on in March, April, is that's what I was shifting my focus to, and I talk about this client that we met over Zoom and we signed a contract digitally. It's like I've been wanting to have my contract in a digital format since I started my company, and then it was like it forced me to, it was like, hey, you need to do this, and it took all of probably 2 hours to build the template, and now it's like, hey, we're ready to sign a contract. All I do is fill in their information and it spits it over, and they have the entire boilerplate contract with all the addendums to their project attached within 10-15 minutes. And it's like it's all of those little nuances that you kind of put on the back burner until you're forced to do it. And it sounds like you're in a similar spot where it's like now, who does, you said who does what and who's responsible for what, job titles, descriptions, and responsibilities. I struggled with that a lot.
It's our job to create the framework for those expectations. And then, and we took that with some time of when we actually never had to technically shut down. Indiana was always essential for construction. We voluntarily chose the first 2 weeks of kind of the whole thing of like, we don't feel like it's because we were, nobody really knew. Like we thought a better decision for the community was we're going to choose to shut down because our jobs don't seem essential, that someone's kitchen couldn't wait 2 weeks to like, let's figure this thing out. Right. Like it was so new. So, and even in that time, like we secured the PPP money, which is incredible. I mean, it really helped us tremendously. But I just told everybody, like, clearly you don't have to work, but I want the people that want to be here, that want to work, like, let's take this time to focus on big picture stuff. Let's divvy up some tasks of like, let's look at builder trend schedule templates. Let's look at kind of standard language on stuff that goes out all the time. Like everybody kind of took some of their things and like it freed that space for everybody to kind of think about how can I do my job differently, or what can I learn about what we've done to change forever how we do things, you know?
Is that something you're working on with the entire team, or just your leadership, or just you?
All the leadership teams. So we've not necessarily the carpentry staff, but yeah, everybody in the leadership team's like, okay, we're divvied it up. Like, okay, one person's going to take the new construction template and try to clean it up and work it better. One person's going to take our checklist for what we expect of a subcontractor and how do we engage with them. We send a PO, we confirm the pricing, we match up the invoice, we push it to QuickBooks, like trying to create checklists for all those things to standardize that stuff. So, in the interim of like, and then it boils down to like, let's make that, is that a quarterly goal? Is that you got to have something done next week? So like, it's kind of that's that whole EOS system that's helped. That is like, you start with where do you want to be in 3 years? Let's work it back to where do you want to be next year? Let's work it back to what's that going to take to do for this quarter? And then who's responsible for what has to happen next week to make that happen? So it's kind of and you realize like we have all these grand ideas of everything we want to do with our companies. And like, when I start looking at my things to do for the quarter, I'm like, that's not attainable. Like, I don't have time to do those things. Like, but in my head, I'm like, we got to do this. And then that's the visionary in me that's like, we got to make this happen, but you can't do it overnight. It's like, it's gotta be a slow process.
I'm in the same spot. I started working with a coach to build out that 36-month plan. And then we started there and basically back to 24 to 12. And now it's like we're looking at this year, and it's the same thing. It's, it also, but the important part of that is you're connecting dots. It's like you can't be where you want to be in 36 months unless you take all these steps. It doesn't, like you said, it doesn't just happen overnight. I'm curious, so what is your goal? If you've kind of outlined what 36 months looks like, what is your goal as a company? Right now you're doing remodels, new construction, buying and building and selling real estate. I mean, there's a few, spider legs here.
Yep. Yeah, we've yes. I mean, I think it's kind of still my goal. I feel like we've kind of plateaued the last few years of like, we've been consistent with the same volume of work, and I think we're kind of in that range where it's like the next leap is where it can really take off and things can really scale, where you can have, I know we joked about the safety coordinator, but like, that's really where you get to 10, 15 million in revenue, and you can start to justify more things, or it's develops more freedom for more specific roles. And I think that, not that it's tied to any revenue number, but there's definitely plateaus in every business where it's like, you go from jack of all trades to specialty people, and you can get better people in those seats, and not necessarily replace with better people, but boil their job down to a more specific task to let them focus on something more intentional, So, I mean, it's still my goal that hopefully in 3 years we can double our revenue, but also ideally double the profit in the end, the net profit. But and just become a bigger overall structure. Like, I still would rather have more people and more staff and do more business. But I think really kind of to tie it back to this whole thing with the fitness is like, people all the time are like, how do you run a 31-mile race? Well, one, I haven't done it yet, but I think I could right now. But like, you follow people that do these things, and like they approach it the exact same way. It's like, well, you break it down into like each mile, and you're like, okay, I got to get this mile done. And then you feel good. And like, your next goal is a mile. And like, towards the end, it's like, you might have to boil that down to like, I got to make it to that next tree. Like, and the smaller chunks you can take to do that, it's all a mental game. And I think that so much running and the distance stuff is telling your body that maybe you're not hurting, or telling your body that you can do it. In the same way of our business, of like, we have to tell ourselves like, success is getting to that next $1,000, that next tomorrow. It might be like getting to the end of the day today, right? Like, the smaller you have to boil it down to where you think you can accomplish it and get a win is what it takes, is that incremental steps.
It's funny that you related to that, like thinking about the next tree, because when we were training, I remember being at points, it's like, all right, as long as I don't slow down from here to the top of that hill, I'll be in good shape. And then it's like, all right, as long as, and you're setting up, and that's probably why a lot of people fail, because they immediately say, all right, I have to get to the finish line. It's like, you're looking so far, like you can't even see that right now. And it's just, it doesn't even exist. If you can look at, you know, what you can see, like relating it back to business, what you can see as far as closing a possible lead or following up with a potential client, you know, that's something you can control. It's in your hand. It's not, I want to sell a $15 million new construction home. It's like, well, that doesn't even exist right now. Like, there's nothing for me to attach to that.
Mm-hmm. And it's so easy to quit on those little moments. Like, if you're thinking about the end, right? It's so easy to be like, well, that doesn't matter today. I can do that tomorrow. Like no, you have to boil it down to something so small and so attainable and so measurable that you can do it or your team can do it. And then you can hold people accountable to it. You can say, like, I got to get to that tree. I got to get to that task today. Otherwise I won't get to the end goal, you know? So it's, I don't know. They all seem like the cliches of, like, you always hear people say this, but like, this is like stirring up a real awakening in me of like what it really clicks for and what it means, because I'm doing kind of the same things in my physical training as well as I'm in the business now. Like, we've got to lay out realistic goals and then break it down to chunks that are able to do, you know?
Was your vision always to keep your carpentry in-house or light carpentry in-house?
Yeah, I think so. And I think we've definitely bounced back and forth with that. And like, we have to, you know, we tell our clients like that it's a service that we're doing as a benefit to them to ensure that we can get through the finish of the job to our level of what we want. So I think that I would have a hard time letting that go and going away from that to more of a paper GC that they call, you know, paper GCs that a lot of people do these days, but it's expensive. It's insurance. It's mistakes cost me and cost Nick more though than they do, you know, somebody that subs things out. You can't backcharge your employees, right? So we're trying to figure out a way to tie that to like a performance of like, guys, we're in a pool of money. Like, we take those against your, you know, your mistakes and what that replacement doors, because you drilled them wrong on the cabinets. Like, you know, let's think about those things and how do you incentivize them that way?
Yeah, I've never been in that position, but I know a couple of contractors that do larger scale work and they subcontract pretty much everything. So, and not even, I mean, it's not new builds, it's older remodels, full house remodels in older towns around here. And they've just built up this really good tight network of subs where they find guys like me who it's 1-man shows, 2-man shows, and then they'll scoop them up and, you know, sell them on, hey, we can land the work. You just give me your price. We'll sell it at your premium. These are the services that we're offering. And then, you know, they have their finish crew, they have their framing crew, all of that. And their carpentry just winds up being another subcontractor. They don't have like the overhead of having the employees, the liability, the workers' comp, the vans, all of that stuff. And, I don't know. I feel like at that point when you're subbing that much, it's almost like keeping those people on staff is it making you money, or is that just kind of feeding the machine at that point?
Yep. No, I agree. It's definitely a balance all the time. I think especially as you grow, probably it's harder to control that to the same level. But I think, I also enjoy the culture that we're building, right? Like, it's also surrounding yourself with people that want to be there. And like, there's something to be said for company outings where it's a bigger team than what, you know, with a different mix of folks that brings some of that home for us a little bit. That's, you know, it's part of what I feel called to do, is to lead a group of people, whether it's more of those kind of people, or if you scale it and it was just leading more of a management company. But I'm still passionate about the physical work that we're doing. So it's kind of like, if I'm going to do both and be in both spaces, like I would rather cultivate that group of people in a culture and be around that and grow that kind of people, if that makes sense. And maybe that's the same kind of feelings that Nick has.
I think that you guys have the same type of mindset and vision. And I think that that's always been the biggest question to me once you get to that point where you're basically subcontracting everything, but you're choosing to keep carpentry in-house. And I've always questioned as to why at that point I feel like it brings a dynamic to things. And a lot of people revert back to the culture that they like having the company. Sweener was one of them. You know, he wants to build a company. He likes the company. Even you mentioned just now that you company outings and this and that. And like, in my head, I'm thinking, well, why not just invite your subcontractors to the company outing?
Yeah.
Where it's like,
Yeah,
we're going to have lunch
never
together
the same, right? Like, we've still got a depth of good subcontractors, and I feel like the relationships are just not the same as employees.
Right. Sure.
Tyler,
we've had cookouts with our subs too, though.
Tyler, you've been approached, right?
Yeah.
So, like, what was your thought? Were you interested in it?
So I've been approached as a sub, and then recently as to be brought on to like take the tool bags off, either be like a super. It would depend on how much I wanted to do, whether it was keep the tool belt on, be more of a super, or just manage jobs. As a sub, it didn't really make that much sense to me at this point in my career, because I feel like at that point I'm building a brand for somebody else.
Right.
The one enticing aspect of it is I don't need to worry about, as long as I perform and I hit the numbers, I don't need to worry about landing work or new job leads or getting my foot in the door with customers in the area that I want to be in. But I also feel like I know my personality, and I would have felt as though all of my effort was not necessarily going towards myself growing, and that's not a numbers thing. Just like, I think that I would be putting my heart and soul into something that's somebody else's.
But I think that's, the other side, like that's your side of it too, where you could speak to the culture, where if that guy hired you as an employee and he had a great team and a great culture, and there was depth to that, you would feel as though you're more part of it rather than being subbed as a carpenter. You're showing up, it's like, hey, don't wear the TRG shirt, or do wear the TRG shirt, but at the end of the day, it's ABC building that did this project. Where it's like, if you were an employee, now you have an ABC shirt on, you're showing up, you're part of the team, you're part of the family, you're part of the crew. It's like, it's, the goal, I think, and Matt would probably agree here, is that, we want to build a company that everyone wants to be part of it and wants to wear the shirt and really excited to be part of that. And that's why I choose to keep carpentry in-house. And, if I had my way, I'd have everyone in-house. Like, if I could figure out a way to sustain having like my own plumbers, my own painters, all that, like that, I think, in this fairy tale thought, like that would be amazing. It would just be one big family that we just build, house after house. But that's not something that makes sense in my mind enough, where carpentry does. It's close to that GC role. It's part of kind of how the company is built, but very much, kept in-house because of that culture side of it.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it. I think that's always been the big question for me, even just looking at it financially. Like the overhead of having, and the liability of having those people, which you still have a liability with subcontractors and everything else. But like Matt said, your subs make a mistake, there is some sort of financial recourse for that if need be. And no matter how many mistakes your employees make, it's not like, hey, I'm not going to pay you this week because you just ruined that countertop. All those mistakes and that learning is really on your dime.
Right.
And then there's turnover too,
But it's also
so hard.
To Matt's point, like being able to, you said the big reason that you sell it to your client is so you can hit a particular quality and make sure that you're happy with it. And I think, like for instance, how John's structured, it's like John, would likely argue that, a good PM can control that, a good, the good finished crew, and make sure that they're hitting the details. But the argument there is that if there is turnover or different crews, it's harder to manage, where it's like the guys in house, these are the same guys, we're training them. Yeah, they're screwing up and it's costing us money, but that's a lesson learned on their end. And then the next time it's, I think you can be more micro detailed at that point, because you're working so closely together, and it's, they understand the company vision, they understand, they're at those company meetings, at the company outings, and it's so direct and so immediate when stuff does go wrong, or when it does go right, or when we decide to make a particular detail standard, without, having to communicate that every time, hey, we always domino every joint in our baseboard, or whatever the case is. You're setting those up, from the beginning in the team.
And it's having an extra set of eyes on every job site. If they're spread out more, that gives us more visibility of somebody that's bought into the bigger picture. I mean, that's why one of our core values is awareness. It's like, you guys, everyone has to stop at the end of the day and step back and go, what else is going on in this job that I should tell Joel or Scott or Austin or Matt about, right? Like what's happening around me that's bigger than just like, I'm working on my tile or I'm working on my trim and I'm in and out, you know what I mean? I don't care. Like, who else has made a mistake, or maybe somebody installed the appliances and they're leaking, you know what I mean? Like, having a team there that is bought into the company, that cares about the rest of the big picture, it's proven invaluable for us in a lot of times. But yeah, I mean, it's the world we're in. We talked about OSHA, we talked about, you get into litigation, you get into liability, you get into insurance, like everything is against what we're trying to do of like employing people. And that's why everybody pushed towards, let's go subcontractors, let's put the insurance on them, let's 1099 people. Like, the world has made it that way with how we've kind of created these systems. So it feels like you're fighting the system to employ people like that, but it's you gotta have customers that also understand the value of those people being part of our team, that hopefully back our core values and our vision for the company.
Yeah, I think it's so tough to kind of put yourself in those positions or try and imagine what it would be like or what you would do. There's a million different scenarios for it. I think that it's kind of the nature of the beast if you're trying to scale to a certain size. And I mean, basically what it comes down to is, like, for you, Nick, you need more work, or you want more work, or you want to get to a certain market. So you're taking jobs in order to get there, and you don't have the manpower to do it. So you either need to hire or subcontract out more to keep up with the workload, where it's like, well, what if you didn't do that many projects and you brought your tile in house, and like your carpenter could install tile, and I know a lot of guys who build one house at a time, two houses at a time, and it's just like their guys bouncing from one to the other, and it's more of a jack of all trades thing. But I feel like we've just gotten so far away from that, and everyone does specialize now, with the hopes of people being more efficient and the end product being higher end, which is questionable, debatable, depending on who you have, schedule, and all of that stuff. But it always interests me to think, like, is this the path to growth and having a thriving, successful company, or is it scaling? Like, obviously, you guys know my opinion on the matter, being that, like, I stunt my own growth every day. But it's like, is that tight knit where you have certain people on certain jobs, or is it like make my company so tight knit that everyone's on a job and we're doing like 1-2 jobs at a time and people are bouncing back and forth? I feel like which was more prominent probably 30-40 years ago.
I mean, that depends on how you define success, right? For me, I don't necessarily think I'm hiring people out of necessity, in the sense that I'm taking on work to get to another market. We're taking on projects that are a good fit for us, and we are hiring according to our master plan per se. It's not, and I don't know if that's what you meant. I don't think we're doing work that we don't want to be doing. I think in a big way we were doing that in years prior.
But I think it comes down to what comes first. Like, we can all curate this kind of, I have a plan, I'm following it. I guess my biggest thing is, we all started as bootstrapping a company, doing multiple tasks and doing it very well to create a brand. And then at one point it changed where it's about the community that you create. Mm-hmm. And the products are kind of the result of that. And in the beginning, it was the product that was the main goal. And I just trying to figure out where I'm kind of a different way, where I just, Nick, you said before, it's like I can hire certain people to do certain tasks, and it just, I guess I want it to be a little bit more organic. That's why I've been quiet, because I'm like, whatever I'm going to say right now isn't going to come out right. Where it's like, yeah, keep hiring, but it's.
What do you want, John? Do you ultimately, would you want your own carpentry crew?
It all depends. I don't know. I don't know where our jobs will be in the next 2 to 3 years of the window.
Understood, but
so I don't know. I think I think right now, with eyes wide open and everyone trying, each individual employee trying to create a bigger bandwidth by sourcing their own personal network for their jobs, meaning it's not just Vintage Builders, it's John, my PM. He can't just keep taking from the network that Vintage has. He has to. Every company I ever went to, I brought my old Rolodex, what it was back then. I'm holding my phone up, but I had a Rolodex that was my worth, beyond my experience. But it was that network that I brought to that company, and companies would then value that. That's almost dead, in a way, where it's like, oh, just use my guys. These guys are vetted. But like I keep telling John, if you need these guys, you have to find it, and it's an impulsive thing right now that there's a lot of work that comes in, and we could say yes to all of it, and then I'd have to grow to that to be able to meet those things. But is there another avenue where, let me just pump the brakes for a minute, let me execute what I have, and let me keep it lean? And that was what's successful to me, is that, I want to have, I mean, I look at it this way, where I've helped build a couple companies, so I've kept rebooting this thing over and over again, and I'm a little sick of it being 40, where it's like, all right, BGB, I poured in 4 years, where it rebuilt the whole thing. That didn't pay dividends, meaning putting in, whatever X amount of hours a week, a day, to restructure a team, to rebuild it, that there should be some profit sharing at the end of it. Then I did it at my last company. It was like, all right, that didn't shake out. So now at 40, I finally found the name of my book last week, and it was like, it's perfect. I'm not going to say it out loud. We'll do it off air, but it nails everything that's in this picture right now, where I'm on paper a success, but yet I'm in an office that's completely unfinished. So how successful am I when I get home and there's no one watching? And that's my big thing is, Nick, I don't know if carpentry, I think I can get every bit of an unbelievable subcontractor for the right price point that can control every detail without having them in-house. And then I don't have to have the burden of a schedule lining up. Like our Carlisle project hit something with DEP. That project's dead for another 2 months.
Right.
If I had that in-house, that would then make me adjust my critical decision-making to accommodate something that I may not want because of having this amount of payroll that has to be met because they can't be put somewhere, or I'm putting them somewhere. So all this planning, all this like network and family and all that stuff gets tossed out the window, because now you're going to take carpenters and go, hey, go paint that room because that job didn't happen on time. And you can have all the meetings you want. It's the reality of it. Like you say, shit happens, Nick. Right. But it won't happen as much if I'm leaner, where can I have people doing multiple things and learn it and take the time where my growth, Nick, you'll probably surpass whatever growth I have. And I might steadily go along, but it might be on my own terms, where I may not grow as fast. I might miss the opportunity for a really couple great jobs. So I don't know where I'm going to be in 2-3 years.
Well, I think it comes down to what you consider growth, what your goal is, right? What's the target? How do you measure success? What are you going for? And I guess that's been my realignment over the last year of like, it's not that I'm okay. Maybe the business does coast and that's fine, but like, what am I passionate about and what do I want to do? And I think that having more of that equal balance, like for me, like I've grown so much last year, family and personal, and like, that's still a successful year to me. Like I feel like it's been one of the best years ever, even if I've made the same money that I've made for the last 3 years. So it's, I don't think it has to be measured to some metric. And I think we all tend to just put all the focus on everything in our life is tied to the growth of the business of our lives. And I think that, it's a realignment of that, of like a more holistic approach that, but it's different for each individual. Like what's the target and what are you trying to go after and what are your priorities,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, and I would agree with Matt. There is this sense, like, John, I don't think my question was necessarily based on, what you project the next 3 years to look like. I think it was more of a personal question. Like, for me, I personally want the carpentry staff. I like that camaraderie. I like having the mill workshop. I like the fact that after a set of shop drawings gets approved, I walk through the shop and I make changes. Like, that's just what I like as is part of that, and that's why it's in-house. So I think beyond, knowing what you're going to have in the pipeline or what's going to be happening, I think the question, and I think you answered it, is that, like, ideally, would you like to have your own carpenters? You take the Carlisle build as an example. Great example. In that case, like, yeah, we had that when COVID hit and we got shut down in Boston. We had to accommodate another project. We got it started. It worked out to the sense that we were able to, when Boston got back online, we were able to shift back in there and still be in a good spot in that other job. That could have went sour. That could have went totally the wrong way, and we would have been screwed with a project that was half done. But in that, in some way, it's still happening because you had guys lined up, whether they were framers or the foundation guy or your excavation. Like, those guys, they're not your guys. They still they might have to go take a job framing out or painting because they were expecting to be framing a house. It's just not under. But
the moral burden isn't the same. Like, sure, having the burden of those people, their salaries, and that livelihood that you have taken on as a burden, we're talking about it being beyond salary. It's
sure
the husbands, the wives, the kids that you're accountable for. And I mean, I've looked at it this way the whole time, is that I'm trying to keep it lean, where my model is like a Doug Whitlow, where it's husband and wife and a few people that, maybe it's just finding the right projects and just.
What you have in a burger?
It's pulled pork.
Pulled pork.
Yeah. I thought I was gonna say eggplant palm.
You put any sauces on it?
No.
Cheese.
Yeah.
Cheese sauce.
Cheese on pulled pork?
I question that.
And the flip side of that, though, too, like, do you, if you aren't, it's all, what's your risk tolerance, right? Like, what are you willing to take on? Because I think that the reverse side of that is, I don't know that you ever experienced the highs that you experience of the gratitude, the holiday parties, the literally sitting around a table with my leadership team where people are in tears talking about how they love what they do. Like, you don't get that with subcontractors, right? And like, so there's intangibles with both sides. And I think but it really comes down to what it's bigger than just the business goals. Like, your whole life has to be approached with what's the overall perspective that makes you happy, and like, what do you want to do with your time, our short time that we have here. And I think that if nothing else, coming out of the COVID situation, is like, everybody's realized maybe the way we've been doing life, maybe the things we've been chasing, everybody's probably corrected a little bit, right? Of like, made some adjustments of like, man, we've been worried about this and that's not even important anymore. Right. So I think that's kind of been what's beautiful. I think that's come out of this whole situation is kind of a take a deep breath, reassess, and figure out, are we on the right path? Are we going to dig into this and continue what we've been doing, or do we need to make some pivots? Right.
I think that's exactly it. I think that there's a lot of outlooks right now, I think, that are changing, and I feel like for most people are getting more conservative, and I think that, like, there was a big scare that came through, right? Everyone got super nervous, and we're gonna either let people go or let people go on unemployment. We're gonna downsize. And then the economy rebounded pretty quickly. And it's crazy to me to see how quickly people's perception and their business goals, and, after that scare, it's like that scare's gone now and everyone's right back to normal and growing, and we're going to scale and we're going to bring more people on board, where I don't know, maybe that's not what we need as a community, as a society, as business owners and everything else, where it's like, let's focus on our team now. Let's focus what's on our plate now. And let's make this as good as it can be for who's under our umbrella now. Because for me, it's like even hearing, so our sales were the same this year, our sales will be the same next year, where maybe people within your company want to make more money or they want to have a child. And at that point, if you're not making more money, that has to come from somewhere. You either have to be more efficient or somebody has to take less money to kind of spread that around. And I think, speaking for myself, that's the type of stuff that gives me anxiety, where it's like, if I know I'm responsible for people, I want to keep trying to do what's best for them from a financial standpoint, from ensuring that they have work, ensuring that they're busy. And that's the hardest thing for me, and why I feel like I'll always remain, like, it's always going to be small for me. And honestly, I think a lot of it's personality too, right? Like, if you're the type of person that you just want to be around people all the time and you like the social aspect of business, then a lot of that financial burden and that risk you kind of compensate for, and you can deal with it. I'm just a different type of person, where like the anxiety of knowing that I have to make sure that there's stuff on the table for other people than like myself and one employee or my family is almost more debilitating than it would ever be worth from an emotional standpoint, a financial standpoint. And I know my limits, and that's kind of where I just stay in my lane, because anytime I veer out of that, I'm like, all right, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah,
Tyler.
I mean, good.
No, good.
I just feel like I agree with you, Tyler. The goal getting into this industry wasn't building a team. It was building a product that totally changed a family or finished a family. Maybe that's what they needed to finish bringing them together. And that has always been my goal, and it's never going to change. So it to sound callous, it doesn't matter the team. I'm not going to get caught up in that trend of, hey, I want to build this. I've had companies that are 10, 15 people, and I get that. And it starts to be a machine. At a certain point, you get disconnected from that situation of the love, especially starting as a carpenter. There's a little fainter smell of the sawdust every year goes on, and more employees come on. And I get that you can not replace, but you can substitute that attraction to stuff like that. But my overall goal is still to be able to take what I have in my head and the experience that I've gained over the X amount of years, spread that across the people I have, and give a client an amazing product. That's it.
So I think it probably comes down to it that for like Matt, Nick, although I don't remember how Matt got into the trades, but like Nick, I know that you were brought up in the trades and everything else. Like, you guys are just more business minded. And like, you want to grow a business, and it could be a construction business, it could be a painting business, it could be a real estate business. Like, you like that aspect of it,
The entrepreneurial part.
yeah. And I don't think that, like, Nick, you didn't realize that you even did until it happened.
Yeah.
But like, if somebody was like, yo, you have to close down NS Builders, there's no more construction, no more house building, you're going to start building pools, or you know what, you're going to start a retail company or clothing company, you would have the same type of outlook and the same mindset, right, and the same culture. It's just switching. It's just that you were, you kind of came into it through construction and then realized that you are more of that entrepreneurial type, which I don't know how Matt got into it, but that's
the same story.
That's not me. And like, although it seems amazing, and I probably sound like such a dick to be like, I think of company parties with a bunch of people, and I'm like, oh, I have to go out, and it's like a night that I can't sit at home and like socialize with everyone. And like, oftentimes I look, what's wrong with me, right? Like, everyone wants to grow, everyone wants a team around them. And I often look inward at, what am I doing wrong, or why am I this way where it's not a right or a wrong type of thing. I just think that you guys have more of that business mindset and it doesn't matter what you're doing necessarily. I think that right now construction or building is just how it's kind of portraying itself.
I'd agree with that, and I
I
think
totally agree. I think I go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Podcast over.
What I find interesting about that is, like, you had mentioned that, I grew up in the trades and I didn't realize that until later on, which, reflecting back, and I've said it before, is that, I always considered myself a pretty good carpenter, but I think now looking at it, I was an okay carpenter. And when, and I say that because I remember when I was belt on, it was, I know for a fact I was never putting 100% into carpentry because my mind was moving too quickly. It was thinking about the next project or getting home to make sure we were building, doing, like, putting out a proposal or following up with a lead. And I would perform, but I would never perform to 100%, where, like, I look at you, Tyler, where it's like the world stops for you, like everything around you stops and you're performing the task to the absolute best of your ability. And that's why I make it such a point to make sure my team is performing that way, where it's like, listen, like, you guys, like, most of the, and I'm sure most of them know it, like, they're better, like, Ken's a far better cabinet maker than I ever was, and Mike's a better carpenter than I was. Like, these guys, a lot of these guys are better craftsmen and carpenters and cabinet makers than I ever was. And when I realized that the entrepreneur side of it and building a business was intriguing to me, and I did that, that's why I think I was so quick to jump out of the bags and into that, because it was so gratifying. Like, there was so much to it that I was like, this is amazing.
So is it about the chase, or is it about the product and the craft?
Honestly, it's both. Like, I know,
I feel like a lot of this is, we talk about the chase. It's about chasing the next product. It's about chasing the next lead.
But I'm not chasing that product with, like, I'm chasing that, my end goal of what I want to build, but doing it deliberately by putting quality first. Like the what has been deemed the rip it out mentality of just like, I'll rip it off the friggin' wall if it's wrong. Like, that's just how, like, we're going to operate at a caliber that we can't accept mediocrity if we're going to be chasing the very best product and wanting to work on
well, if you have 6 guys on site with NS Builder shirts on, mediocrity really shouldn't be even in the wheelhouse.
Right.
There's that many eyeballs, it's like, dude,
right,
someone's either got to go home or...
Yeah, and if it happens, like, again, it should happen, so it gets ripped out, and it doesn't happen again.
But does it ever feel like we should just slow down and be like, maybe we're just going too fast, where there's so much going on that this is how I feel almost every day of the week, is like, how do I hit neutral?
You need to hire. You need to hire.
No, John, absolutely. And I think, Matt, you said it earlier. It's like, there's absolutely times where I've said, maybe I should slow down. Maybe, and not, I don't
like
want
a second.
Yeah.
But like, when is that?
No, second, then he's like, no, never mind.
Bed.
COVID was like the longest ever that Nick thought
that was
about
a long
not
time.
scaling.
Yeah,
it was like 3.5 days.
So when did you realize that you were a better marketer than you were a carpenter? Like, when it came down to
I don't know.
It's come so easy to you to be able to dial in a market that
I don't know, because I don't believe I have dialed it in.
So what about this proposition? I want to bring Matt into this. So basically, you guys got your foot in the door through it with the trades, right? And didn't ever realize that you wanted to actually create a business. Because, like, I don't feel like what I do, I didn't really create a business. I'm called a business for lack of a better term, but, like, I'm not growing something that I feel like I want to pass off to somebody down the road. That's just not one of the reasons why I do this. That was your entry into the market. And I think that a lot of the hang up with people is that the way that we're brought into it is through the trades, and then everyone's evolved into a business, and then you don't have business experience, so now you're trying to figure out the business afterwards. So Nick, you're trying to figure out the business afterwards while growing a business, while you have a lot of money coming in and out. So there's the argument where, like, why not get a business degree, get a business specialist, and then, like, what about the people who, like Mike from ECS, who didn't have any carpentry background, who now runs a construction company? Is that a better route? Is it a better route to come up through the trades and then trying to figure it out afterwards? Is it all irrelevant? Like, I think
it's irrelevant.
I think that more people would have a hang up.
I think we put too much weight on.
I think more
choppy.
Sorry, I'm breaking up.
Yeah, I was breaking up.
I think that, like, more people have a hang up with the paper contractors who have no construction experience, who are just subbing everything out, running a business, and depending on everyone else's knowledge of the trades to perform and execute a project.
I'm going to do
You talking right to me on that one, Tyler?
No, but I'm going to do a crappy job at kind of trying to cross-reference this. But it's like, it's like going to a sub shop or a dine-in restaurant. It's like there's different kinds of restaurants. They're not all in the same category. And the sub shop, it's not a worse restaurant. It's just a different restaurant. And a paper contractor is just a different type of contractor. The guy that goes to business school and starts a construction company, I genuinely don't believe he has a leg up on the guy that starts out in the trade and then ends up building a company, or the guy that starts in the trade and stays in the trade and is a one-man show all the way through. They're just different avenues to get into not the same type of company, but a similar. Like you're in the umbrella of construction.
I guess what I feel like is actually happening is that our industry is kind of evolving and changing, and not obviously products and all that stuff. But I think, if you think of a general manager, he could switch from working for Cessna to public service, where, like, their business mindset is interchangeable from company to company. And I think that our industry is probably moving more towards that, where people are getting in and looking to grow a culture and grow a company and build businesses rather than all of these smaller mom and pop shops. And it's almost like we're halfway between the paper contractor who brings in a business specialist to run the company with no experience or background, and kind of what you guys are doing, where you're coming up into the trades and then trying to refine it, really focusing on business more than anything else.
Yeah, I think too that when you surround yourself and we hire people that are of the same, like, growth mindset, like that, the team that that I have and Nick have, like, those people force Nick and I to, like, we all want more. So, like, then it becomes a little bit more organic growth where it's not, like, forced, I guess. So I feel like there's a little bit of freedom of that, of, like, we've agreed as a team that we are going to grow, because if people underneath each other trying to them improve themselves, the growth is going to become natural. But I kind of the same take that Nick said, like, I think that these things can all exist in the same world, and there's multiple ways obviously to run all this stuff, and I don't think that clearly we all do different things in the same areas of work, but there's opportunities there of, like, a not a shortage mindset, but, like, there's being a growth mindset and opportunistic mindset that if everyone has it. And I think the same thing that's going on, like, the culture of the world right now is, like, maybe we just don't need to back off. I'm saying not to you guys, like, of, like, just take a deep breath and quit putting so much pressure on each other to do. And, like, let's just be as a community, right? Like, let's just exist and not try to force my way on somebody else or your way on me. You know what I mean? Like, there doesn't have to be a one size fits all for everyone. And I'm not saying either of you are forcing that, but it's like,
I think,
take that pressure away.
Yeah, I think that gets portrayed sometimes, through this, just through, like, the fact in social media in general. It's like everyone is, naturally we're all chasing someone. We're all like, John, you made the Whitler reference. Like, you look up to, like, wanting to be like that, and there's
I think I'm comfortable waiting 20 years to get there. I think you guys will take advantage of a marketplace, grow a company that will do that instead of individually making those small accomplishments, and whatever long that takes to make that accomplishment for that execution. It's
but that's neither
Tyler,
here. That's
Tyler,
not
is that what you're getting at? Is that, you know, Nick, in the beginning you had on your card master carpenter, that there was experience was valued at one point in time, where if you had it, you had a leg up or you could accomplish something. Now with social media, everyone projects that they can do it all, and if with the right branding, they can get the money to accomplish it behind the scenes, but not actually have the foresight and the actual experience and knowledge to actually really pull it off. It's, oh, I got those drawings, I can do that. Here's a number to that, and now I will then go chase down how to do that with the right people. But back in the day, it was, you knew it. It took years to gain that experience, and now it's like buying the right products and buying the right people will get you there. And
I guess I just, as we're having the conversation, my thoughts are kind of evolving and changing too, because I'm thinking to myself, you know, the problem with our business and the lack of growth and nobody wanting to get into the trades is that it's not lucrative enough and people can't make enough money. And I think that, like, the inability for people to grow within a company is a turnoff for people. And I think to myself, there's not that many businesses out there or industries that don't approach their work with a more business oriented mindset. I think that a lot of contractors are just like carpenters like myself who start a business and figure it out as they go. But there's not that many industries where you would just do that. Like, you're not going to be a doctor and just be like, well, I'm just going to start practicing medicine, you know, like, or even a restaurant. You would want to look into the business end of things rather than just investing in a restaurant. And for carpentry or contracting or building, it's never been that way. The point of entry is like, hey, I can make an hourly wage that's this much more by starting my own business. And then we get into it and realize that you're not making money. How can you make money? So I think that it kind of evolves, but there probably should be more business mindset into everyone's company before they open it or before they even consider doing it, rather than getting into the trades and kind of working backwards to try and figure it out like we all have. I mean, that's probably why a lot of companies open and close so quickly. And to kind of touch on what you're saying, John, I do think that as to grow a business, like if we were to take somebody who runs it could be a financial company or a bank, and they're in charge of everything, you could hand a construction company over to them and they would probably be very successful. But what they would do is they would need to find people to execute those roles. And it's not necessarily coming from within. And I think what happens is now, like, because you don't have the mindset, the skill, and the knowledge to manage a construction company, you need to find a manager. You need to find somebody like a super, and then like your costs go up and your costs go up, and you need to take on more work and you need to build, because you're specializing all of these roles now, rather than having one person who can oversee that and have the knowledge to do all of that. So I think that, like, it just kind of happens as you're trying to grow and step away from it, and people don't have the experience. You need to bring in people who can specialize and gain that experience. And I think that your costs go up and you obviously have more overhead, and then you need to take on more work. And it's just like, hopefully that growth is slow enough and internal, and you can maintain those employees, that it's an organic growth and your business grows through experience. But I don't think that's always the case. I don't know why I'm so chatty tonight.
I like it.
There's a lot there, yeah.
I like the fact that you're like you said, you're evolving as we're talking about it. There's a lot going on in this conversation.
Yeah, there's no right and there's no wrong. I think that's the big, like, what you guys are doing is not right or wrong. Do I agree with it 100%? No, but that's why I do what I do. Do you guys agree with what I do? No, but like, it's this, like, you could tell me that I need to grow, I need to hire people till I'm blue in the face, and I'll get off this podcast and I won't think again about it, because it's just like, I know myself and I know what I want to do, and I'm not going to put that much weight into it until, if I was ready to do that, I would. But there's certainly no right and wrong here.
No. And it's funny because a few minutes ago you had said, you know, one of the reasons and one of the things that makes you uncomfortable about it is the financial side of it. And I would say, and I don't know, Matt, if you agree, but it's like that's probably the number one thing that I worry about. You know, from like, I think about, all right, well, this person makes this much money right now. Like, what does that look like for them when they're 25, 30, 35, 40, 50 years old? Like, you know, are they, number one, is it enough for them right now? Does it give them a path to make enough later on? Will they be comfortable with that? You know, do they want to make, do they have goals to,
when do they plateau? Have they plateaued, and am I paying them too much?
Right. And the paying too much thing is hard for me. And I don't know why, because I honestly think,
hard for you in what sense?
Hard for me in the sense that I don't think anyone can be paid too much. And I'm
hiring?
And I'm trying. Not currently. And I'm trying to dance around that carefully, because yes, some people can absolutely be paid too much. But I also don't think, like, just because, this is how I'll put it, just because you're a carpenter, you can only make this many dollars per hour. Like, I don't believe in that. And
no, I think I wouldn't put carpenter as the label. I'm saying responsibility and growth and experience. At a certain point in time, people, they hit a plateau where they just don't want any more. And you pay people in the beginning to drive them to want to do more and to find where their cap's going to be. At some point, whether it's their threshold for responsibility or just their overall experience doesn't catch up to where they should be, where those lines don't connect anymore, that's what you have to, we're thinking about that right now with somebody, is like, all right, well, if they really can't handle this, they're being overpaid for the position that they would be as labeled. You know, maybe
so
they're
what's the move there?
That's right where we're at, is like, hey, they should be an assistant PM, but what they can accomplish and their responsibility level and what they basically, whatever falls off the plate every week is the same amount. That's where I'm not blaming them. It's just that's where their experience level is giving them, and they're not driving to go further. And if we keep them where they are, the label is now superintendent, and now we're overpaying them by close to $15,000. So how do we broach that? And that's a discussion Ben and I have almost every other day, is what is our agenda? What is our plan for these people? Because it isn't all cupcakes and hugs and pool parties. It's like, how do we navigate this so people have growth? And if they don't, how do we broach that, where that can be a crushing blow for somebody, where it's just not catching up.
But that you're saying they're overpaid by $15,000 based on a superintendent salary.
Based on, I mean, I'm not taking it from careers.com. I think it's just, what if we were to put superintendents on X amount of jobs based on how many hours in a day there are and how many hours in a day that we pay them for salary wise, this is where it would fall for them. You know, I could overpay them as a super.
What are you guys basing your pay scale, like, when it comes down to it? Even like, Matt, what are you basing your pay scale, or what would you cap somebody's pay scale at? Is it the return that you're getting? Like, if you're making me money, I'll pay you more money?
Yeah, I think that's the hard part. Is like, I don't think there's any playbook where we're like, what is a project manager or superintendent, or, you know, the role titles are all over the place in our industry too. Like, there is no playbook for what that's worth. I mean, we've put together our business model for what the financials need to be for how many jobs we can run at this level of gross margin and vehicles and all that stuff. And like, we try to, build out the budget that are reasonable numbers. But I think that to the point of like, that's where the tie back to the original conversation about even the safety thing. Like somebody's job at any level of growth becomes, you have to focus on the people, and like what you're doing, John, with the people that you're analyzing about what the expectations are, like, but that becomes like Nick and I's, like somebody's full-time job at the level of 15, 20 people in a company. Like you got to spend almost all your time on your people and the expectations for each person, and do they want to grow? Like, so let's put a growth plan together for that person, or have the conversation with them that the growth mindset is not there.
At what point do you look at yourself and go, do I have too many people where I shouldn't have that many people because I can't be responsible for that? You don't have 17 kids with you and your wife. Why?
Yeah.
Because you can't control all that, and you can't afford all that, so you don't do it. So you don't live beyond your means. So at some point, when it got beyond the scope of work and the jobs and that stuff, and it became about the people, and now you can't cover all that, maybe at some point, do you have to look at yourself and go, maybe we grew too fast?
Well, I don't think it just becomes that there has to be layers, and you have to find out that you love the layer that you're at. And I think that probably where Nick and I both found ourselves is like, I grew up framing and rough carpentry, and like maybe I could have been an okay or a good framer if I stuck with it, but I didn't. I felt called to more, like that I felt myself that I could pull together a vision and get people to get behind an idea that we would have, and then kind of stumbled into the business and then realized that I actually really love this part of it. Like fortunately, because there are people that wake up too late and realize they hate it and they do want to recoil back and go back to what they did. So I think that it doesn't necessarily mean that, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing that you switched what your job is. It's that you got to make sure you love where you're at. And I think that then it becomes, you got a layer of like, I have 5 or 6 people that I can touch base with weekly, and I can't go see all my carpenters once a week right now. Like I'll go 2 weeks without seeing some of our carpenters. And so I do hate that part of the disconnect that I have it, but I got to make sure I have a channel in place where they can feel connected to the team through somebody else that's, now infills behind me. So, but I think that it just becomes that you have to, for me, it's been chasing, like this year has been a realignment of like, no matter what all that happens, and I love the industry and I love the business we're in, like I got to find my happiness in something slightly outside of just what Emergent is doing. Right. And like and I will encourage that from my team too. Like I want them to be able to do what they do, but don't work day and night. Like I hate that when I see that they're messaging all hours of the night. Like I want people to be encouraged that life's bigger than what we're all building with our businesses, right? And I think that it took a realignment for me this year to kind of figure that out. But
you said in the beginning of the podcast that you were making sacrifices, and your wife knew you were making sacrifices, and there was like a realization of, all right, I've been doing this for X amount of years, I need to stop. Just for those that are listening, can you speak to that? Like, what sacrifices do you specifically refer to when you think about that?
I think for me, it was mostly like I would, be at the office all day. And then like, even when we get to some level of like, okay, we got 10 employees, we're successful, quote unquote. Right. And like, everybody's got this idea. And then I, come home, eat dinner, jump back on the computer, work for 2 or 3 more hours in the night. Like, that's just not what anybody should be doing with their time. You know what I mean? To burn the candle on both ends of completely. But I think just not, just letting the business kind of grow as fast as it wanted. And that's where, John, to your point of like, it has to be controlled growth to know that it's sustainable. Otherwise it is just going to break one day. Right. So
but how do you know if it's controlled growth? You might right now think it is.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, is that there's not enough experience in half the games of companies that are in the business right now that they haven't been mentored. There's not that whole, Nick, I do get rubbed the wrong way because I've watched certain companies take branding and advertisement. This is not you at all. There's a different company that we talked about it before. That
sometimes I sit here, I'm like, he's talking.
No, but I want to know, because people think the same thing. And I have, honestly, I love your success. I absolutely do, and it makes me rethink. I
appreciate you, brother.
It's a great edge that it puts on me, that like, hey, he's done it this way. You and Tyler, honestly, I've surrounded myself on both sides, because at the same time when I look at your picture, I'm like, but Tyler's got it so much simpler, and he accomplishes so much more, and more. like tangible, like he physically has a touch on what it is, and I don't want to lose that. Like we've always talked about Tommy Silva snapping the glasses on, and I just feel like, Nick and Matt, if I ever got to your level, I'm like, how could I ever get back to that? But I lost my train of thought of what I was trying to say before, but it's
I think that's the reason the conversation started with Nick and I were reading the hard thing about hard things like the same time, right? When this thing first hit, that's where Nick started texting. I think he reached out to me or we touched base and I said, man, you should read Hard Thing About Hard Things. And he's like, dude, I'm reading it right now. Like it's, it's not for everybody, right?
Did you guys send like emojis, like kiss emojis? Like,
John, I think I sent it to you. I was like, you should read this. Oh no, I sent it. I sent it to someone else.
It was the other John. No. But I was saying,
you gotta feel cut out for it. Okay, yeah.
No, I was saying like it rubs me the wrong way that I've watched companies that will take $100,000 or $150,000 and dump it into ads, and they've jumped into a market that I may have taken 10 years to even, rub up against, and they're both successes. Mm-hmm. Like Tyler's saying, everyone is like, there's no right or wrong. It's just, maybe I've taken the old mentality, old man route. It's like, you know what? I'll walk there and you just jump in a Tesla and drive itself and you can do two things at once. Where, I value, that's most of my grit on this podcast is I value that experience that has taken me this far and those screw ups that have happened that once that burned me for a ton and I didn't price things right. I don't know. It's just, it's a different game now and it's tough to keep up.
I think that's super important to note, and I think taking your mistakes and your failures and really learning from them is incredibly important.
And spreading them out, where if it happens all the time, then you've done an amazing job of spinning it. Where it's like, it's a tear out prop. You made it a trend, bro. You made it a hashtag. That I can just take it out. Yeah, I'll just do that every time. It's like, dude, that will crush some companies. There's somebody in Kansas right now going, I tried Nick's thing, and now I don't have a car or a house. Sure. And my wife left me.
And I'll be totally candid here. There's been times where I've done it, and it's almost crushed me. Like 100%. And it's been, but I've never looked at that and said that, this is the end of it. This is the right thing to do, and I'm going to stick by it. And I've promised myself I will always do the right thing. And we need to learn and move forward from that. And, and to speak to your comment about when do you know, like the Tommy Silva comment, but also when do you know, like how many people is right? Like we just hired a couple people, and it was, Matt, those late nights coming home, eating dinner, kids go to bed, sitting on my computer, doing the math. John, I actually did the math on this. I swear to God.
I gotta see it.
And I sat down and I was like, if I hire these people, are they billable? Where can they be billable? Can I bill out a carpenter at a higher rate?
Or were you like, hey, if I close these two, this is doable?
No, nope. It wasn't based on projects. I don't want because that like Carlisle, it can go away, right? I looked at just the company based on how we're operating. Looking at and this is where I'm getting in, like becoming more in tune with my numbers and working with the coach. It's like understanding what last year's sales were based, and then understanding what I was doing, what my expenses were per quarter, and then this year, and then going into it and understanding, all right, if I did X amount of work with 15 people and this year I'm going to have 20, that computes out to this much in sales. Just a real quick. And then that's like obviously big picture, but then it's like, all right, now let's break that down. What kind of people did I have last year? I had a lot of apprentices and a lot of guys that are entry level. Well, and there's a price point for that. But what if I'm bringing in guys that are substantially higher in pay rate, but they're substantially further along in their career and they can perform at a more efficient level?
It depends on what you had sold at the time.
Of course.
Like whatever products you had, if that plan wasn't in place to have seasoned guys, then you're forced to hire apprentice level.
Yes, yeah. I mean, in a big way, I look at, a lot of the things that we've done in the past is that we had a lot of guys that were learning, and I love that part of it, and I never want to lose that part. But one of the struggles that we had was finding seasoned carpenters that were really good at what they did. Where Mike went from a carpenter to a PM, where it's like then we had this huge gap between like carpentry. That's where we had to supplement bringing in subcontractors, which they did a great job. It just, they weren't our guys, and we weren't going to be able to micro adjust them to our practices. And I shouldn't say we couldn't have. We probably could have.
I need you to write. Can you do my website?
Matt, do you guys do
Sure.
Cost Plus?
I love how you
We do some.
turn that.
So,
Hold on.
I mean, does Cost Plus make this like the way that you're able to bring people on or switch? I know that you're developing a budget, but your budget is a preliminary budget, and then it's changing, and you're billing your hours of who's on the job, or is that rate the same? Like, would Cost Plus make this be easier for you than if Matt's not working Cost Plus, where you're like, hey, this person's coming in and this is what I'm paying them an hour? Because like for me, I line a job up and I'm not doing it till 6 months later. So if I bid that with so-and-so who makes $25 an hour, and I just brought somebody on more experience who's $40 an hour, and that offset of efficiency isn't necessarily that 15, I'm eating that.
Absolutely. So and from our, like, we're bidding, we break all our carpentry tasks down by what kind of person is doing it and how many hours and what that rate is. We break carpenters down in 3 different tiers: lead carpenter rate, apprentice rate, and they have 3 different rates. So apprentice, they can be paid a swing of roughly $10, and then a carpenter's roughly $15 swing, and then lead is higher than that. But they fit into those brackets. So if we bid the job, we're not selling it saying, hey, we have 50 apprentice hours, blah blah blah. It's a dollar amount. It's $30,000, and
It's the same as my budget for carpentry, whether
Right.
it's framing, trim. I could bring guys in,
and I can put 6
divvy that
apprentices on it, or I can choose to put 2 leads on it. And it's, to your point, Tyler, like, yeah, if the efficiency isn't in parallel with the $15, that becomes very difficult, and you'll exhaust that budget. That's where it gets not, I guess for some people it's probably not a big deal from a Cost Plus. It's like, hey, it is what it is. You signed it.
Yeah,
we're billing
like
it.
at the end of the day, if Cost Plus is like, hey, this is what we thought the budget was, and we're at this amount per hour, technically that could be something that was due to what you did, but legally
they
you
could teach you to learn.
charging.
They could pay you to
Poor
learn.
performance. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is where I think the morality comes into it. At least for us, is that we're having this conversation right now. We're reviewing an overage on a project, and we're combing through it, trying to understand, hey, why? Was this due to poor management? Was this due to the fact that the guys didn't know what they were doing? And ultimately, there's hours in there that it was just reworked because it was an oversight. I'm like, we're not going to bill for that. Like that gets moved over to a builder variance. And it's just it is case by case, because we spend a lot of time, even though we're Cost Plus structure, we spend a lot of time building our budget to make sure that prior to starting construction, those numbers are as committed as we can be.
It makes the job of the PM easier. If they're not realistic, it makes their burden so much higher.
I feel like I'd be more willing to help hire people if I was under the same price structure too.
I mean,
dude, he'll hire you. We've already had this discussion.
But there's also like that. That's
it's
where
just that little. It's not a little bit for me, like that little bit. Which for Nick, maybe Matt. I don't know Matt well enough, but for Nick, that little bit of anxiety that's this butt is like 100 feet tall for me. But like just having that little bit off my back, where it's like, if I really get in a pinch, I'm gonna be okay, would probably make it easier.
But so this, and Matt will agree here. That's where it you bring that back to marketing. You have to sell them on the beginning of it, of the fact that this is how we operate. And the reason that we build time and material is because we are dedicated to giving the absolute best product that we can that we can physically give you. And it's not a matter of like, hey, we're time and material. Like, you're not just like shaking your shoulders around like, hey, we're time and material. Whatever it is, It's you're going into it with with an understanding that, this is a preliminary budget. We're doing our very best to project all of these unforeseens. It's a renovation, so let's put a 15% contingency on this project, or whatever you want to put for contingency. But understand that, if we're going to start going over on framing, I have the conversation in the sales meeting, is that, this is how our budget's built. We're going to build out price points for each of our in-house carpentry. If we're under, I always start with that. If we're under, you're only getting billed for what we actually perform. So if we have 30,000 in the budget, and we spend 22, you're only paying 22.
It's a piggy bank. It gets to go back in the piggy bank.
If it's over, then we're gonna have a conversation about it. If we have 30 in there,
with who? The super or with the client?
With the client. I mean, first with
everybody.
With the PM. Like, is this $2,000 overage? Is this real? Like, oh yeah,
is there a design? No, is there a design change that dictated that $2,000? Is
there a design change? Did we open up and find rot? Whatever the case may be. If it's a real,
always chasing rot.
If it's a real thing, we're gonna go back to the client and just explain, hey, listen,
it's the worst.
This took longer because XYZ. Like, we're just letting you know, like, obviously, like, we're about $2,000. We're projecting $2,000 over, whatever the case is.
Here's the thing, Tyler. The cost plus thing is that, like, a lot of our stuff isn't vetted out all the way, and it's because it gives you a little bit of variable, meaning whether they pick certain things, meaning it gives them the ability not to make. Again, I keep saying the word burden, not having that burden all in the beginning. Like, we're dealing with a client right now.
Delayed decisions.
Yeah. Which I, on the scale of jobs that we do, is an issue at times because people aren't making decisions, or there are slight design changes where, you go in, and one of my selling points on jobs is that there will be a minimal amount of change orders unless we find a massive issue or we change design. So it's tough for me during the job. I don't want to be nickel and diming or like adding this, or I feel like a lot of times it does become a wash, and I like to sort through that budget beforehand so I can dial that in as much as possible. But I think that having that, and not that it's a buffer or that you can use it, but just like taking a little of that anxiety off, where like, hey, if we run into something, like, I can still have that conversation, but I'm always, the way that I'm doing it, trying to still hit for that number where it's not like it's just a different format, which, like, I'm sure you guys have done jobs that way as well. But I think that knowing that there is that wiggle room there would make, I think it would probably lessen my anxiety with things. Or even like, hey, we switched to helper in here, this is the rate, let's look at those hours, which I can do. It's not as transparent as that point. I think even going to my customers and being like, hey, here it is, which I started doing on my last job because the customer wanted to see everything. But it's like, hey, here's what your shower glass was, and here's what it is now, because we got rid of a knee wall, and like this had to be hinged off of glass rather than off the wall. And like, I came to them with the two different invoices, and like there's a markup on top of that, and it took that added number off of it being me, where I was just charging more, which for me it's huge. It takes that, like, at that point, I'm not saying, hey, you guys owe another $2,000. It's like, this is the number I budgeted. You saw, like, there's a markup on top of that. You saw what that number is, and now here's the number. And then they don't have any issue with that, which I think it makes it easier for me.
Tyler, in your budget, is there management, or is it just overhead? And then you break out like tile, and then you pay yourself for that? Like, is there any management in your overall
I actually
scope?
Just started putting some on there, and it realistically, it's just kind of fluff, where like, I know that I'm always under on the amount of time that things take just because I'm slow. And then like, I have markups on subs and materials from vendors and all that stuff, but I don't think that it actually, I mean, it doesn't cover the amount of time or like the trips back, and being that I have my belt on somewhere, I'm not doing other work. So I started actually charging, and it's usually just like a lump figure in there, but management on top of those other things, where it's like, I have to be there with my plumber, I have to come back, or I have to go through this with the electrician, which I feel like that should be in your electrical markup. But then
No.
like I want it to be an extra, because there's parts of the job that I am managing, even if it's myself. Like I'm there and I'm doing light framing, but I'm also managing myself doing light framing. It's not when I'm there framing that I'm just framing. Like I'm sitting
those
there.
Materials. You ordered,
Exactly.
You went over the windows. I guess what I'm trying to say is that like the first step for you to even let go a little bit would be like maybe averaging out 2 hours a day for that project for management.
Yeah.
And then being able to see those numbers might give you the ability to be like, all right, could I peel back? What does that tally up for this 6 months and then a year for management alone? And it might open up, and then it like the Nick in me is like, then you can market it to management. And,
yeah.
you know.
No, so I actually, the past couple of jobs that were like bigger jobs for me, I realized, that I shorted myself on that end, even dealing with customers and everything else, because I'm on the job.
Do you
and
track your hours?
If I have a 20-minute meeting a day and I'm there for 3-4 months, like that adds up and I'm not getting paid for it.
But people would see that. Like if the new client calls your past client and one of those target points is like management, is that an issue? And they'd be like, he stays every day for an extra hour to go over this stuff. You could get that in a heartbeat.
Right.
Yeah, and like I said, I started putting that in, and I didn't realize. I mean, I'll be 10 years in business. I think I'm 10 years in business in July. So now I'm 10,
Congrats.
and I'm just thanks. I'm just realizing that like 9 and 15/16ths in that I need to be charging for time that I'm there supposed to be doing something else, and I'm actually working with the customer because I don't have a project manager or a superintendent.
It's all you, baby. You can hire $67 a week.
See, but then this is where my mind goes after that. It's like, so I can peel back and I can spend less time on the job, but like, so then I could maybe hand off and pay somebody else more money, or like pay somebody more money or bring somebody else on so I have less work. But then at the end of the day, I need to line more work up to now keep that person busy. So then I need to take the bags off completely, and then I need more work lined up, and I just go down this whole rabbit hole where I'm like, in order to grow it's like that first step, I feel like I'd need to hire like 3 people and then just sell jobs and manage jobs. The in between doesn't work.
Do you track your hours?
Like
in a spreadsheet? Yeah. It would be interesting for you to do that, and I say that because even though our PMs are all salary, they track the hours that they spend on a job. So
I
that
can
way
easily figure it out, like close.
Like, and it's even at the end of the day, you could just write 6 hours carpentry, 2 hours of management.
So Nick, why are you tracking your PM hours?
Just to understand how much time the guys are really dedicating on set.
Have you ever done time cards?
Yeah, we do time cards.
No, have you personally? Not them. Like, to
for
realize how
about a
much
month.
time cards suck.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just talking out loud.
But if you're a PM and you're on a couple of jobs, same thing though. Like I just tell our team too. Like at least we go through it like routinely. Like at least think about, okay, half my week was on this job, a quarter of my, at least put something to it, so then we can review those numbers quarterly of what is our overhead number, right? Like it comes down to you got to know your numbers.
But if there's salary,
on their phone, it's like
but if
on
they
their
have
phone.
2 projects and they're doing 2 products, you're gonna get them out of salary. They're definitely working more than 8 hours a day. It's a win from the company standpoint.
Sure, but if we still want to make sure that we're billing enough for that supervision.
Or if you do their hours, you can at least tie it to a percentage of their pay. So you can you got to get it down to a dollar figure to tie it to some kind of budget. Like it's good that Tyler is looking at his numbers. You got to know your numbers. I think at any level, you just have to know your numbers. So
you know the duration of the project that the people are parked on, right?
Yeah, but if I know how many hours he spends on the one project versus the other, that's incredibly helpful. That way, when I look at another job, I can realize, hey, that's a similar job. We need management 100% of the time. Like he needs to be dedicated on that job. We can't split
construction,
him.
addition.
We can't split him. Because ideally, that's
Well, that's different. Hours versus what he can handle, in the complexity of the project. That won't be told in in their time card. I'm just saying, I've done it in the past, and time card sucks. Where if I know what I need to get out of a PM, and I have them on 2 projects, maybe one's a 3-month project and one's an 8-month project, it's my job to have the my opinion, again, probably wrong. It's my job to have the pulse on that. If I have a small enough company to do that, where their focus can be on production and getting the site right, and not be worried about having to track their hours and that stuff, because there's a huge amount of stuff that needs to get done in a day.
Yeah, to speak to, like, it's literally, they hop in their truck, they open their phone up, 8 hours. Today I just, I worked with the plumber, electrician.
I know
whatever.
what it sounds like. I've done them both. And
yeah.
At the end of the day on a Friday, it's the last thing I want to do.
I mean, you may not be getting exact data, but at least you're getting something to work with. And
yeah.
It's something to make it tangible and know that there's some kind of accountability.
So what is the accountability? If it, like, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, if they're spending their entire week on one job, like, there needs to be a conversation then of like, well, you're not getting to all their jobs. Like, what's the problem? Is it because we've got too much on your plate, or you're not efficient, or you've got a learning curve to, a lesson in time management? You know what I mean? So I think there's a lot that can be learned from the data.
But you think time card is going to be what it is, or is it the lack of productivity in a project?
Well, I think it's not necessarily holding them to a time card. I think it's the same thing. Nick and I aren't talking like we clock in and clock out on it. You're literally writing down by the hour. Like, same thing of our PMs. Like, I'll spot check and be like, okay, guys, for next week, just think about how much time you're spending on this. I actually don't do it regularly on every job, but like, we do look back at like how long that job took, and then how many jobs they had on their plate. And we're constantly juggling that of what is the limit for people. But especially with growth, like if you're set in a normal flow and we're not a growth mindset, then it can be more easily controlled. But if the goal is to grow and add more to that, everyone's going to constantly be feeling some sort of pressure to, can I take another job, or do we need to hire somebody else? Right. So it's kind of a battle of that whole thing, because we're still kind of in a growth mindset. Yeah. Not on production. Yeah, I mean, if the goal is to grow as a company, then yeah, it's got to be based on growth of how can we push everybody to some sort of limit before it's too far.
I think we're talking about growth in 2 different ways, like growth on what someone can learn from knowledge and execution, or how many employees we can get out of a company.
Growth or volume growth, or maybe not even employees, but volume business growth in general. Yeah.
I think another key item that I didn't mention is that we're billing our job supervision by the hour. So like if there's dedicated supervision, that's billed to the job. If there's project management outside of the job supervision, that's an overhead. So like that's why we're tracking our hours on site, to make, like, if it's project supervision, where it's like if they're in the office working on pre-construction for something, they're not billing it to that job, because
that's completely different. Yeah.
Yeah, that, like, we're not,
you have a kettle to pull from that you only have so many hours to do. That's right. I mean, I guess when I did the PM thing, and you're juggling 2 or 3 jobs and you have to track those hours, it gets old quick.
Sure.
And I get that the knowledge is definitely valuable, guys. I'm not disputing that. And my spreadsheets, I calculate everything. It's just one of the things I hated doing, and how little accuracy was put towards those hours. Mm-hmm. It just was like, someone's using this, again, not having closer pulse.
You say that, I'm actually curious. I haven't checked them in a while. I'm going to see if they're accurate.
Why are you using them? Like that's the thing, is like, it's, I don't know. I feel like there's always another simpler
living
way.
Room stair layout, sent rework pricing. What else?
We don't need to do this because it's boring me.
It's boring you. My bad.
I'm definitely not that in order to be tracking my hours.
No, but it would be, for your sake, it would be good to understand like how many hours you are dedicating to strictly management.
Just for sure.
Just on your way home, even if it's just a mental note, it's like, yeah, I spent half my day just working with the trades, and half my day, doing carpentry, and then note it down, and then at the end of the job you say, hey, all right, that bathroom, I actually spent 200 hours just managing trades.
Yeah. It's funny because I think obviously I'm dealing with everyone and everything, but from customer to customer, the management time could be like completely polarizingly opposite.
So hard to gauge.
Like from my job now, even as far as, so we have like a pre-construction design contract, which basically for the past 3 years that we've been doing that, I budgeted a certain number, and I've never actually capped off the amount of design work until this past customer, where like I exhausted it about a quarter of the way through pre-construction, but in my contract had no actual budgeted amount of hours. And like throughout the job, it's it's every day. And I'm like, next time I'm allocating a certain amount, budgeting for a certain amount of hours, and I'm going to say it's going to be X amount per hour after that, because I know you're not going to ask me to go to the countertop place for a third time if you're paying me $125 an hour. Like, I know that you're not going to have me buy a white fan and a black fan and unpackage both of them and send pictures to you while you're on vacation. If you're paying me $125 an hour to do that, I'd save myself so much work. So I'm like, I don't know. I still continue to learn. Exactly. But like, yes, of the two, this customer, I know that I would not be doing it. Like I wouldn't get paid for it, but it would take so much work off my plate. But it was my fault. I never mentioned anything about that. And it just takes like the one customer where I'm like, from here on out, like I just signed a design, like a pre-con design contract last night, and I budgeted a specific amount of hours to it. And like, hey, after that, it's this much, or during construction, it's this much per hour, because I don't have a designer on board or sometimes if I did, like I'm footing that bill for every single decision that has to be made where I shouldn't be.
But more importantly,
good. I was saying, one thing we're trying to figure out similar to that is like, how can you give them like, here's level 1, here's level 2, and here's level 3 of like, you know, here's a $1,500 gets you, here's a $2,500 gets you, here's a, you know what I mean? Like, let them give them the choice of your level of involvement. So, but it's hard to put that in some kind of tangible number. I like the hourly rate that you're thinking, but that way it shows them like, well, and then you can have that conversation. Well, you clearly didn't pick that service early on to get, you know, whatever that is. How can you, but it's hard to compartmentalize that into something that's a tangible dollar of different levels of service. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you want dedicated on-site project management, like on Nick or I's jobs, like, and you want one person to be there all day, every day, then our price is this, right? If you're okay with a blend of like, well, we have a project manager, we have a superintendent that's on multiple jobs, and they're going to be checking in and out on subs, and they're not there every day. How can you help them understand the pricing and what that gets them early on? We're still trying to wrestle with that of how do we explain that early on to make that make sense, so they know they made the decision. There's
got to be a list of questions that you can ask somebody that essentially are going to be answering, are you a pain in the ass? Can you make decisions?
Are you psycho?
Like, yeah, exactly. Where you could politely word that to get those answers and be like, oh, you're classified as a purple. That's this much to design your job. Where like they don't actually know, and there's a color scale there.
That's the beauty.
Trend. The job's gonna have color codes on the side. Yeah. You can be like, that's a red job.
This lady's gonna be a red. Charge her top dollar.
Well, I feel like sometimes I know you're designing it, Tyler, but sometimes when the design comes across the board, that tells half the battle. It's like,
for sure.
This will be brutal. Yeah. You know, or if it doesn't make any sense at all, it's like, all right, selections, we're bringing a designer in. Like, there's a lot to be said before actually even connecting with that client, because sometimes they do a good job of marketing too, like hiding it and playing it off, and then knowing.
Absolutely.
Like, the hardest part is like I'm giving up a lot of the management part, where the day-to-day interaction with the client. And it's like, all right, so how do I get it where my guy's not going to sit there with the client for 3.5 hours and shoot the shit because it's a client meeting, you know? It's like, because I make it look casual, but it's definitely productive. Like, we're drilling down on stuff. But when you give it off, it's like, all right, if I'm going to give you the client, then how much production are we going to lose? You know, that's the biggest. Nick, we talked about this before. It's like, all right, you're going to do more numbers. All right, so how much production am I going to lose? How much should I have to overlap for that? So we're restructuring. So it's like, I'll still do, you know, design meetings with the clients and that stuff, but that PM will be with us, and then they could just basically take notes and gone. And then I don't have to do anything else with that. Like, I don't have to worry about, did I get you the wallpaper contact? Like just make that.
We're still back to the level of engagement, and like that's the difference in like cost plus versus fixed bid. And like we just got burnt on one today that we priced a big remodel, and they took the other bid from the architect because they went fixed bid. And I'm like, how are you giving a fixed number on a project that there's so many variables on?
Yeah.
And ours had a bunch more allowances than theirs did. And I'm like, I don't like, you picked them because they committed to you on some kind of number like that's arbitrary, and we never even had a conversation about cabinets and tile and
wasn't your client
complexity. Like, no, exactly. And but this is after an architect had it, so it's like, and it still wasn't clear. So it's like
they're not your
we're
friend.
still talking like the level of engagement early on. Yeah.
So many architects, their value in the beginning is bringing multiple people to the table.
Yeah.
And you do that dance once.
Yeah.
Unless it's Patrick Ahern.
Yeah.
Wow.
Then I'll do it again. And maybe a couple more times.
So Matt, when's your next big race?
Middle of September up in Wisconsin. So
Dude, you should be doing this on a treadmill right now. Like what?
we're
you're slacking.
I already ran 10 today. So the current plan right now
hold
is
on,
10 miles a day.
Are you running in a loop?
No, what do you mean? Like
around like your neighborhood?
It's around his house.
No. So currently we're running. So currently I'm with a friend I can touch base on, and we're doing he set up a thing. It's called 1001 City, and it's like we have some social media going on it. But our goal now is like he started June 1st, and his goal is around 1,000 miles in 100 days. And we're basically trying to hit like as many pockets and neighborhoods in Indianapolis as we can. So like the map's getting kind of full now. We're 31 days in. He's at
wasn't
300
there
miles.
Like I swear a couple weeks ago you kept running by your house.
So one of them we did for fun was I actually did run a 50K out of our house. We did a relay style. We ran a 1.5 mile loop from our porch up to the neighborhood and looped back around. And then like my wife and we kind of did a couple of relay styles. So we'd you'd run for 1.5 miles, then you'd switch, run for 1.5 miles. And we did that for whatever, 7 hours until I ran 31 miles. So we did that like back in May, I think it was.
I thought that's how you were training. I'm like, and we talked earlier about like I just got to get to that tree. I'm like, if I see my house after I start running, I
have to poop. Oh.
Yeah, like,
sorry.
It's hard.
I thought that's what you were gonna say.
It definitely is a mental game where you gotta. But I've done loops where I ran past my house like 6 times on a run, like just to get that training of like I gotta run past my house and I gotta keep going.
Yeah.
Because when you're running 31 miles, like you gotta run and keep running. You know.
31 times, your neighbor's like, that dude's outside again.
We literally ran by the neighbor lady. She's guarding the whole day. We ran by her 40 times. No joke.
What's up, psycho? Hey, that guy's hitting on me. Keeps coming by.
But we're currently running 10 miles a day, and it's pretty cool because we're just basically the goal is to connect with the community. Like we're actually stopping. We're not going fast. We're like connecting with people in the neighborhoods.
So you're really going for a walk.
Like,
you're just going for a walk.
Kind of, pretty
just
much.
A stroll.
We'll run and we'll stop, and then
That's cool.
It takes a minute, but
I could do that.
We're connected with the community and hearing stories, and it's cool because we actually hired a guy out of it because one of the times we were down in the neighborhood.
Of course you did. Oh, it's like Oprah.
We found a kid that was out running, and we're like, and he was saying, hey, I just graduated high school, going to school for construction management, no experience, and we're like, my buddy's like, hey, you should talk to my friend who's over here with me, and started talking, and Brian just started this week with us, so it's a pretty cool story. So, but we've just got story after story of like the goal is to just connect the community and like to because there's so much division and so much hatred going on right now. It's like it's just for us, it's a way to like do the running, get back to a little bit of the community, and like kind of share some of the stories of like the good things that are actually happening in the hearts of people that are like just doing cool stuff still. And like it's been pretty neat. So that's been fun, and it helps us stay motivated to not have to pound out 10 miles without stopping and talking to people, and it makes it a little more stomachable. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think I would die if I ran 10 miles.
It's not that
that's
hard.
No, like I would literally die. You guys would never see me again. I would just third person on the podcast.
I'd like to see what you would wear for that 10-mile run.
I don't know, dude, because
ripped.
No, it'd have to be a bathing suit. Like I don't own athletic shorts. I mean, I own I don't own athletic shorts. I threw them out years ago.
You got to get some short shorts, show them tattoos off.
Dude,
70s racing shorts.
I'm thinking about it. Send them. I'll wear them.
Prefontaine height.
I sweat so bad. So I'm like especially in the humidity right now, like it feels like I'm swimming right now when I'm done swimming, but some of my friends don't sweat at all, and I'm just like drenched. And yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, I don't sweat that much. I never have.
That would be nice.
We should do a
Yeah.
run. Let's do a run. Mon Craftsman
There's
run.
no way I'm doing a
Yeah.
run.
Do like a
Tyler.
5K.
Come on.
5K.
5K.
No.
Yes.
No, you guys
Yes.
can push me and like, or
Sure.
pull me in like
Yeah.
a cart or
Pig-
chariot.
piggyback.
A
Piggyback.
chariot.
We've been on for 2.5 hours. We could have just been on FaceTime and we could have ran 15 right now if you guys wanted to.
Oh,
You know,
Watch
let's
you guys
scrap,
run
let's scrap this
15.
podcast too. Let's
Grab
scrap
the
this one
headlamps.
again, and we'll go for a run.
I don't have the energy. I know that when you work out, you get more energy from it. So I was like very athletic through college, and one thing I just never could stand running, ever. I would work out till I was drop dead, like wrestled into college, and just never enjoyed running ever.
I was the same. I was honestly the same till last year. 37, and something clicked, and I like somehow figured out that I actually like it.
Crazy.
When I was
I
younger,
think-
every time I ran, it was just a sprint. Like we did like this 3-mile loop for college. Like this is what we do. Like it would be like this test. We just sprinted the whole thing. There wasn't like for the longest
Yeah,
time
you
of my
weren't-
entire life, there was never a red line that I would hit and be like, huh, I don't have any more energy. And then I turned like 38. That's like, oh, I found
Get
it.
older and realize you don't bounce back as easy.
You gotta pace yourself.
I did 4 early this week. Did 2 with the misses, and then I went and finished another 2.
Nice.
I don't know.
I've seen you
honestly,
posting some runs.
yeah, it clears your head. I feel like I have a hard time with priorities because I feel like I do weigh them a lot, and I find that I'm like last on the list. Where it's like, all right, I do like the run, but then I'm like, oh, let me just get this one thing done. You know, like
Yeah.
my big thing this week is like I'm taking Friday off. Right, that's my goal. And then my
Yeah.
client's like, can we do an 8 a.m. meeting? I'm like, we'll do that. Then I have the rest of the day off. And then John's like, can I come to that meeting? I'm like, and then you have the rest of the day off. But it's, I think, I like, Ben and I talk about it all the time. It's just like, how do we get the mentality for our guys to have the same mentality we have? Like when we were at our last company, I still go into work on Saturdays. Like for 20 years. Like that just does, I don't know how to shut that off. Whether it's just a quick pop in, and that's a comfort thing for me. And until someone takes it away from me, I'll probably keep doing it. So it's like, I'm not going to ask my guy to come in. Hey, come in on Saturday, will you? It's like, I never had to ask Ben, and Ben just does it. So it's like, we're hoping that our guys will do that. And it's not that, like Ben says, if they don't, do we let them go? No, it's just like, we have to then, like we're probably going to go more to a superintendent role for guys for on the site, and then have more of that PM do that. Benny moves into the GM / director of ops. I go into business development. That's kind
Who's
of
gonna do your safety meetings?
there's a guy who's like $67 a week, and I can just
I
grab
also think
him.
sitting here, I think I had the wrong number. I think he's more expensive than that.
I was
But I
gonna say
don't know.
$67 a week is pretty cheap.
And it
And
was
like-
76, I think.
I'm gonna have the
Or
other Nick
76.
just send me his plan every week and be like, just forward me that stuff.
But like, if you're paying
will
each
too.
one of your guys on each project, like whoever's running that, you're definitely paying more than that.
Yeah, but
No,
it's just, I'll take the hour or half hour instead of them doing time cards to be like, do a safety check. Like just in the overall thing, I'll then, like right now I'm having fun with this kid from college that he's been an intern for his co-op for like 3 years now. And I'm like, you're not sweeping anymore. You're not moving stuff anymore. You're done. You're now an assistant superintendent on a Cohasset project. And he's like, dude, thank God. Like, so I'm like, what? He's been in the city with Benny for the longest time. And I'm like, I'm not doing that to you, man. I'm done with that. You come out of college. Like now he's, like we went over his electives for next year at college. Like, he's like, what's going to work well for this? Like, what should I take? Blah, blah. So we sat down and did all that. But now it's like today I'm leaving and he goes, we have 1 carpenter for tomorrow. Here. I go, how's that? I thought we had 3. I thought we had 3 for the rest of the week. All next week. We're good to go. And he goes, what do? I go, you call Bruno and you shake that out. I got a text when I got home. He's like, we got 3 carpenters tomorrow. I'm like, dude, I can't teach some of my other guys to do that. Like, and you just did it. Like he's like dialed in, but he's almost like, he's like writing notes in his notepad that tucks in the back of his pants like I have. Then he's digitally writing it down. And then I'm like, all right, the redundancy, like, I know it makes you feel okay right now, but you're burning a lot of time right now. He's like, it's all color coordinated on his Mac. And I'm like, bro, I love you, but that's the brain dump. So I'm probably gonna. I talked to him today. I'm gonna kick him over instead of having that Excel spreadsheet. Kick him over to Build a Trend, so he can put his to-dos and then do his action list that way. And then the stuff he wants to write down is on that I can see. So it's one platform, and then the notepad is really the receiving end of it during the day. Right. Meaning, as you're walking through the project, what am I receiving that maybe I don't have an answer to? Maybe I need to look at a detail. Maybe I need to ask John something else. That notepad is that. So you can then sit down at the end of the day and go, all right, these are things I don't have. These are who I need to call. And then put it, whatever doesn't roll over, whatever rolls over goes into Build a Trend. That's how I've broken it down. This is the first week.
That was always my system. When I was running projects on site more, I was like, just a notepad on my phone, just like constantly like typing stuff as I'm walking, going here, so that's the kind of training stuff that as you scale things, you got to figure out how to dump the years of knowledge that we have into a system that is scalable. If somebody doesn't know that, like, how do you make it more productive? But type all your notes up, you jump in the truck on the computer while you're still sitting in the driveway, organize your thoughts, like get things figured out. And then you can make phone calls on the way to the next job site, right? Like figuring out ways to streamline the efficiencies is so important that you can't learn that stuff. It's in school either. Like you just got to figure out the best way that somebody's going to teach you how to do that, and having time for training is key,
But part of it is like,
yeah, I think that's,
I really want him to write stuff down. And that's,
yeah.
Tyler, you breaking up? Or is it me?
I
He said something. He froze up, I thought.
I stopped talking.
Oh, I was saying, it's totally me. And this is how I want to teach the guys, is that I want them to be able to write that down, because writing that stuff down, it's like looking at drawings. Remember back in the day when you used to take that little like pencil thing with the roll at the bottom, and you used to do all your linear foots for like base and all that? That's when you absorb so many more things.
How old is John?
Oh my God. But dude, that's what you guys all miss, man. Now you're clicking buttons, and it's like you didn't see that door is too close when you turn that roller and there's only like, a tiny little eighth of an inch. It's like, dude, that's wrong. That's good. It's got to be, the casing won't fit. There won't be enough real estate. And when you're
but I did notice when I zoomed in on my Mac on it.
Yeah.
Okay. When you had someone do it for you. No,
I still do my takeoffs.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
I did a lot of drywall estimating back in my old job, and once I learned on-screen takeoff, like digital takeoffs, like holy cow, it was so much faster.
But
Same.
bro, it starts somewhere. The means and methods, they say this over and over again. If you understand the beginning, then you can upgrade to the next process.
Oh yeah, you got to learn the original. Yeah, I definitely learned the roller. Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, I get that it can be all on a on like your iPad or your Mac, but I want them to write stuff down. Like I told the kid, I'm like, you got to do like 2 different pens. I want your initial thought goes down in black on your notepad, and then when you go back to revisit that item, it's in blue. So then you know that you've had progress on it and that you have an action that's closed out by the 2 colors. And if you see it's all black, just at a quick glance, you're like, I got to sit down. Like this is stuff I've done forever. It works. Now I'm like, I want this young kid that can be he has the attitude, shape it right now. And whether it works for us forever or not, this will, like, even Kirk, my kid that worked for me at my last company, he's like, dude, the mentality of breaking up each job, each build as 3 separate jobs, he goes, that works for me today in commercial. Like the outside is its own project. Landscaping, own project. They don't have to be, pivoted on the other one. Interior is its own thing. Like right now, the one in Cohasset, we have 4 different projects running. That's the way I look at it. Because if you look at it like one big project, it can get overwhelming. It's like focusing on the finish line for that race. Yeah. Dude, 10 feet at a time.
You gave Nick a hard time about having divisions within the company.
I know.
Now you got 4 divisions.
In a house.
It's funny that the whole conversation about getting the principles down first. I just had the conversation with the guy, Ryan, who works for me, and was showing him how to cope trim in. And he's like, would you do it with a jigsaw or a grinder? I was like, well, you have to learn on a coping saw to actually realize what you're doing and where you're pulling like the meat from and where you're back beveling to. And it's the same thing with like
the grain.
Yeah, or like nailing trim up. Imagine if you had to nail up like an outside corner of crown molding by hand. Like your nailing pattern and everything else should be the same with a nail gun, just because it's easier to just put a nail gun up there and fire it away. You're not actually thinking. If you approach it as if like, hey, I have to hand nail this, where should my first nail be? It should still be the same, but people don't learn that way anymore.
Or it's even, I had this conversation with someone the other day. It's like, dude, some people nowadays, they don't, like, the odds of that nail gun isn't set all the way and the nail doesn't go in. No one's learned, like, oh, I got to set that nail. Like, it's just, it's
Painter does it. The painter does it.
But that's the thing. It's always somebody else. And at some point, as the GC and the builder, that gray area stops because it's completely on you. We always joke about like the dryer vent. Like, is that the HVAC guy? Is that the plumber?
Yep.
It's like, it's these gray areas that become these nightmares of you that just always, you're always picking up the pieces of. And how do you, it's the same as like we put base in and we keep it off where the cabinet guys are. Cabinet guys put their stuff in. Who fills in the base? I could have my in-house carpenters do it.
Who connects the fart fans? Yeah, who connects? Because those go in with the electrician, right?
Right.
Who
It's
connects
like
the duct? Yeah.
it's all these things, and that's what you got to teach a kid early.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
for us,
catchy,
well,
Go ahead.
I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole with that one.
We've been jumping rabbit holes all day, bro. Dig
I
in.
know. I was just gonna say, like, it's absolutely on like the PM and the guys in the field, but we write a lot of that stuff into our standard, HVAC subcontract. So it's like we know like our subcontractor, but the argument you can make is that, well, what happens when you bring in a new HVAC sub?
No, or the guy, the technician that's on site has no idea about the agreement. So
Right.
instead of telling that guy to connect it, your PM then has to go email somebody else that's not on site.
Mm-hmm.
That guy has to then radio this guy who doesn't have the stock regardless to get approval, and you've now made that task 3 times longer because it's in a written agreement that it gave you some security to push back on him, which you never would, because I was taught early on, you deduct money from a guy, he'll get it from you one way or another on this job or the next.
Oh yeah, it's more so the fact that, like, for instance, I don't like my HVAC guys doing the low voltage wiring. So it's
No
just
bueno.
like, yeah, I'm like, hey, my electrician, like when we look at a job, I'm like, I want you to assume that you're doing all low voltage wiring, and I want everything in conduit. And it's like, and the same thing with the HVAC guy. You're doing HVAC, these are the specs. I also want you to assume all the bath fan connections and all the kitchen connections. So he's making sure, like, we're communicating that in the bidding process, like making sure that we're setting these things. It's like, those are those micro details that we want. We want our mechanical room to look
Those
clean.
are all in there. It's just on the ground.
Yeah.
On the ground.
It has to be.
And an electrician doesn't staple the thermostat wire. Like, it's those little things that, like,
Right.
you could write that all day. I could write it in Sharpie on the 2x4 where the T-stack goes.
But I think it does have to start with the guy that's pricing the job, right? It's like,
Always.
I'm like, hey, when you come down the wall with 8 pieces of Romex, I want you to use the plastic clips. He's like, well, the plastic clips are, they're going to cost a couple. But I'm like, I'll pay for them. Like, this stuff matters to me. Like, I want this stuff to be neat. And all of those details, like we're starting that conversation early on in the sales, and then yes, in the field, it's just making sure that the follow up is there. Hey, like,
But some of it is, if you do that early, like how do you figure out what their base price is? Like, what's included and what's not? Because if you start tacking on all these items that are curated by you for your job, you can't open yourself up to a much higher price point without knowing what their baseline was. Like, meaning, hey, start this and have a contingency in your budget of like $5,000 for HVAC. Let them install their thing, see what their baseline is, and see how they install, and then go, hey, I need to manipulate how you guys do this for us. Okay, I need this stuff
that's
here.
just, I mean, it's with my experience, it's just the conversation and the involvement. It's for a new guy.
Before or after?
Well, I mean, after jobs that we've done in the past.
Okay, yeah.
I feel like it's also developing your baseline from the get-go and having them price that. And then as a job progresses, be like, hey, I didn't mention this, but this is what I want our standard to be. I think that there's like critical things, like when you have a plumber, John, what are critical things that you want them? And you're not going to be able to get every detail, but like, hey, we stub everything out from PEX, you know, transition to copper before it comes through the wall.
It's all manifolds and not trunks.
Yeah,
you know?
just like, and get those, and then like you're gonna miss some stuff, but in the middle of the install, it's like at that point be like, hey, I didn't mention this, but this is what I want moving forward to be our standard. I mean, that I'm a much smaller scale than you guys, obviously, but that's the same way that I do it with, like, I found a plumber that I like now and included as much as I could into our process, and then like as he came through, I didn't make him redo stuff, but I was like, next one, this is what I want.
All right, man. Matt?
Yeah, what else? What's the good news in everybody else's world with the whole shutdown? What's something positive? What's
We're
been
good.
positive that's come out of all this for everybody? A highlight. Last
My
4
kids
months.
my kids and my wife didn't kill each other. That's huge. I mean, let's just be real.
I think honestly, it's been a lot easier on my wife not being on the road and commuting for 2-3 hours a day. So she's been much less stressed, and I feel like when Rachel's not stressed, she's not a very stressful person, but if her load lightens, then like she can pick up the slack on certain things or help me out, or the girls have more of her. So honestly, I think that a lot of the at-home life has actually gotten better with everyone being around and like spending more time, the girls getting attention and all that stuff.
Did you cut out?
Yeah,
Alright, you're good.
Did I cut out?
You're
We
good.
lost the end
Yeah.
there.
We bought a quarantine cabin. So
Nice.
yeah, we randomly drove up to well, I guess not totally randomly, but
So
came across this little
everything's
lot-
impulsive.
everything.
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 Did you hire the owner of the place too?
We found a little log cabin, and it was like something we've always kind of wanted to do, especially with the kids, and just have a place where I could actually leave and go to and not be able to work. So we pulled the trigger and bought it.
Like no internet, no service, or
There's hardly service. She is adding internet just so the kids have something to watch going to bed.
nice.
But no TV.
How far from home?
2 hours.
Nice.
Yeah.
Not bad.
No, it's perfect.
Yeah, it's been good. I feel like we've had having us both home. It's been good. 'Cause like I just like to be able to go on a walk with the family in the middle of the day, right? Or go, So I'm still kind of half working from home, half at the office. So we're kind of not even really transitioned fully back to the office. So it's I've really enjoyed the freedom and the flexibility that's brought. So can't complain.
I guess I brought on somebody new since all of this hit, which has been very good.
Congrats.
Scaling up.
It's like a 1-for-1 exchange. But he's actually, he came in and wanted to work for the summer. He's a 6th grade science teacher. So he remodeled his entire house on his own. A lot of it self-taught, and he really just wanted to come on and kind of learn, wanted to work for free, which I wouldn't let him do. But he's just like super excited to be here, wants to learn, wants to work, enjoys working with his hands, and just, it's one of the first people in a really long time that I've had that just is super engaged and like happy to be there. He's 34, married, doesn't have kids, has like responsibility, real life responsibility. So he understands, what kind of has to be done, which has been, he fits the bill. Unfortunately, he'll probably be going back to teaching because that's what he does.
Maybe not.
He doesn't
Maybe
want to, actually.
Maybe he'll do a Zoom class from your job site.
Dude, he did that's when he started, was when he was still in school. So he would take like an hour a day or a couple of random phone calls and just like pop on the internet and do what he was doing and then come back to work.
Start the movie.
Pretty much.
Dude was making bank, doubling up on the jobs there
Right.
for a minute.
Yeah. But it's been good.
That's the important. I mean, being part of the culture is so important, especially because one person's bad attitude can ruin it for everybody, especially as more people come on board. So
Yeah.
that's a huge thing to have good attitudes.
Well, Matt,
John?
I appreciate you
Yeah.
hanging out for 2.5 hours.
Yeah. Time is 9.
He's been
Good to
running
catch up
in
with you
place
guys.
for the listeners at home. He's been running in place the entire podcast.
I need one of those desk treadmills. I already got my 7 a.m. 10 miles in today, so
Good for
Nice.
you.
That's the way to do it, right in the
It's
morning.
legit.
yep, bright and early. It's not as hot.
Do you eat before or no?
Usually I don't. I might eat a little snack, but I don't eat too much before. I have some calorie drink, like a powder that I put in my water just to give me some calories while I'm running. So,
You should try the Fuel for Fire. My buddy runs.
what is it?
It's like a Fuel for Fire, little protein
Fuel for Fire?
premix. Badass.
Okay. Check it out. Well, cool.
Awesome, man. Well, we will see you soon.
Thanks for hopping on with
Sounds
us.
good.
Second time.
Yeah.
Second time
Yeah.
guest.
Thanks for having me on.
I know I was trying to figure out what episode he was on previously, but
I don't remember. It was in the 50s maybe, or around
How do you,
50.
you don't have it.
back.
You don't have a plaque on the back of your office with like.
I should. You never
oh,
mailed me
did we
one.
didn't send that?
Send that up.
Man,
Oh,
it'd be right here by my
God. John-
family crest.
Yeah.
There you go.
Craftsman right here.
We got to call our plaque maker.
Yeah.
They're pretty cheap. $67 per plaque.
All right. Here we are.
1 year commitment.
Yeah. It's no brainer, really.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, man, thank you for hopping on again. Appreciate the chat as always, and be well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
See you, dude.
See ya.
We got 2 reviews up here.
Dose.
We totally should have followed up with when you bailed, John,
What happened?
with your mom. But your mom is okay.
Yeah,
How
Mom's
is she
good.
doing?
She's good. Her car got totaled, but brand new car, less than 100 miles. Kid went through a red light, smoked her. Some burns on her arms. Ankle was banged up, but
Smoked her.
seriously, the kid put on the police report that he was in a haze when he went through
What?
a red light. Yeah, on Route 1 in Walpole.
AKA on TikTok.
Yeah, on his phone or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it was just a bummer. It's just her and me, so
Yeah.
that was it's a bummer.
Well, we got STX Cattle Grazer. First, checking to make sure your mom's okay. But this is Steven from Houston, Texas. I'm a commercial HVAC equipment manufacturer's rep. It is incredible to hear how knowledgeable you guys are compared to your run-of-the-mill builder. Your attention to material science, technical construction detail will help the future of construction advance at a pace it should. I'm biased towards mechanical design and the importance of educating consumers, developers, and designers on the matters of thermal efficiency. So I could remark that more emphasis should be put on that. But I spent the last year gutting and remodeling my own home on the weekends. Tyler's methods have helped me create a beautiful space. I have the social and worth ethic of John if I only had the money and festoons of Nick.
Ooh,
Okay.
I like the
Dang.
end of that one. That was fun.
I should have pre-read that one. I used all information, guests, combined knowledge, and applied it to my project. My home is now beautiful, and I'm a proud man with a very happy wife. Be well, and keep doing what you do.
Come finish my house or start it.
Dude, mine.
We got another one, a 4-star, not 5. Let's see where this goes.
I feel like that's going to be honest.
All right. I love the host and definitely have learned a ton from listening to the podcast. As a young carpenter, it's great to have a resource to up my game and hear from so many experts in the various fields. I will say that every now and then the guests don't do it for me, especially when it's some super accomplished architect who uses the sometimes 3-hour show to brag how all about their accomplishments. Overall, would highly
who that was.
recommend the show with the caveat to pick and choose depending on the guest. Ron the Carpenter. Okay. Fair enough. Who do we pick? All right, Ron the Carpenter.
Honest review.
Ron the Carpenter or Cattle Grazer? Who gets the hat?
How many hats do we have?
We got a bunch. We got 10, I think.
Should we have them arm wrestle? Virtual arm wrestle?
No, Cattle Grazer will get him.
Calgary.
You think he'll win?
Huh?
You think he'll win or he'll get the hat?
I think he'll win.
Oh.
Let's give it a Cattle Grazer. He wanted to check in on John's mom, so
Appreciate that.
Yeah, so Steven from Houston, Texas, mechanical engineer. Shoot us an email, info@themodерncraftsman.org with your name and address. We will ship out that hat.
Who was the other guy?
His name was Ron, the
Maybe
carpenter.
we'll get Patrick's office to send him a hat.
We don't know who he was talking about today.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And then, hey, for the record, I think
Sure.
I emailed you guys, but Tyler, thinking about the whole 1-star, 4-star, all that stuff.
Yeah.
iTunes definitely needs like the 5-star stuff to kind of bump us up, but to give people an option to give an honest review or criticism, we've created a survey monkey that people can go to our IG, hit the link, and then you can go through the survey, add a bunch of items that you think should change in the podcast or you love. It will then help shape the podcast going forward. What do you guys think?
That makes
All
more
right.
sense. I feel
So
like
5
it's
stars on iTunes to
constructive
keep-
criticism. That's good.
All
Yes.
right.
That
Cool.
way, with the review, we can't really change till after it's been published, and it could hurt us in the standings.
Yeah.
However that works. But this way, it's a easy way for people to go through it, and we can add questions as it goes. But it's
This is true.
So maybe if you're thinking of the negative review, let's head over to what's it called? Monkey?
Survey Monkey.
Survey Monkey.
Survey
It-
Monkey, which is on the Instagram
yep,
profile link. And then
That way
we can make some adjustments and maybe circle back.
Yeah, and that way we can remain the leading podcast in this industry.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We got
All
this
right.
figured out. I think we got
Well-
this licked at this point.
Next week, we got RB Gallup from
Oh yeah.
Gallup and Lafitte. Am I pronouncing that right?
I don't know.
I think he chatted with John, right?
Yeah, it's one of my guys.
And we're going to be talking about design build approach and a couple other things. So see you guys next week.